No. Okay. All right, here we go. We're starting. I don't know if anyone has signed on out in Zoom land or not. Only show one participant, that would be me. So we're it for now. People will probably connect in as we go along. So this is the Saturday morning session. We have a really interesting and very cool presentation by Rob Brown to start us off. So Rob says he was a little nervous because he hasn't practiced his presentation. Has anybody here practiced their presentation? No. Okay, I haven't either. So you're in good company, Rob. And where the hell did you go?
I'm right behind you.
Oh, okay.
Nervously lurking over your shoulder.
Okay, I'll take it away.
Hello. Yeah, nervous. I'm not nervous. I never practice these things, so we'll see how it goes. How much time do I have? Howard, how much time do I have?
You have an hour.
An hour. Okay. I should only
Including questions.
include questions. Yeah.
Yeah, the agenda is right here.
Oh, that's right. Okay, thank you.
You have until 10.
Well, I'll see if I can get this done in half an hour. Okay, so my title is called Flipping a Bird, How I Converted Two Hobby Killers into Killer Instruments. And I've got them here right behind me. You see one on a mount and one on a dual pass auto collimator. You're welcome to play with those later on today as we have time. But the purpose of this project was it kind of evolved, but the purpose of it started out with a couple of donated useless scopes that I work with Portland Public Schools up at Ida B. Wells. I volunteer for the Astronomy Club and the Makerspace. And we had these scopes donated, and we realized that these Bird Jones junkers were just not gonna fit in our telescope library, which includes 8, 10, and 12-inch Dobsonians. They have 5-inch spherical mirrors at f3.5, and I had done and presented here a 16-inch mirror that f2.8. It was a Herculean Odyssey, and it's scratched and sleeked, and I've got it here. We're going to resilver it tonight. And I thought, well, these little 5-inch mirrors, they ought to be a lot easier to make. And after what I went through on the 16, wouldn't it be a good idea to just try some small mirrors and see if there's something I need to learn about the process? Because I know there's something I need to learn about the process. So, so what can I learn by parabolizing some Bird Jones mirrors? And that was the seed of the project, but that's only the very beginning. And I'm going to really talk about more what the project turned into, but I will go over a bit of the mirror making. So it was easier. It was chaotic. It was nonsensical. It was frustrating. It was the whole thing that you would expect making an f3.5 mirror, even though it was small. It just that it went a lot faster than a 16, and I got them done, and I'm pretty happy with the results. So I wish Tom was on and looking, because there's a data set for him. You know, you make a lot of mistakes, and then you hit milestones, and then you make more mistakes, and you just iterate your way into completion. And so what I did was, you know, I thought was pretty smart. I took lots of ronchograms. I wrote lots of notes. I put all of my ronchograms into a PowerPoint, and it turned into, you know, 150 slides before I knew it, and each slide having multiple ronchograms on it and lots of notes explaining what it was I did and what I thought I should do next, kind of a thing. What I learned along the way was that trying pedal laps was great, but they didn't work the way I expected them to. You'll see later on, they actually did a good thing. I turned a bad kink into a spherical mirror again. I built a Ross null lens system, and I really liked using that. But I'm not going to present a lot on it. I'm more interested now in this dual pass auto collimator. It's far easier to use. I made my lap out of AccuLap. I love it. I have both 68 line per inch grading and 133 line per inch grading. And I got to tell you, you need to label your gradings really big and keep looking at the label because I I wanted to use the 133 grading uh, because of the short focal length of these mirrors, and I wanted to really see more of the details that were going on. Which at short focal length you need a finer grading to see those finer aberrations, um, and uh, the first challenge was trying to understand what was happening out at the edge of the mirror because of the fine grading and the diffraction. The second problem is in the last bullet there was, well, I used the wrong grading and I parabolized it to a hyperbola of -2. But as I'll say later, Mel's Ronchi matching test got me there to -2. So So this is just a Ronchi-gram of the spherical mirror using the 133 line per inch grading, and hopefully my mouse shows up, yeah, on both screens. And you can see how what looks like a turned edge, if you don't look carefully, is really just multiple images of the edge of the mirror caused by diffraction. And trying to tease out the difference between a turned edge and a diffracted edge was not easy. So I made sure to take this picture and refer back to it frequently, so that when I did get a turned edge, which of course I got a turned edge, I knew when I was done getting rid of the turned edge. So there you go. The project started then in Jerry's kitchen. It's always good to use somebody else's kitchen. Just let me say that. And we poured some laps. He did pitch. I did AccuLap, and oh boy, AccuLap was exciting to me because number one, it is not black; it's clear, and if that stuff gets tracked around the house, you'll never know. The other is that it is very low odor. It really does not stink up the place like pitch does, and that was pretty cool. We'll see what that means. I'm hoping that the low odor also means that the volatiles are much slower to come out of that stuff. And lo and behold, I made that lap in January, and I used it again just 2 weeks ago, and it was still good. So happy about that. After I made that lap, I improved upon it, and I wanted to show this because there's a lot of there are a lot of ways to make pitch laps, and I've come up with my own way that I just wanted to reiterate. I shared it back on the 16-inch, but what I did was I made a little Baltic birch plywood base at the right diameter, sealed it with a polyurethane finish, poured the AccuLap on top of it, and then with it warm, I pressed this grid, and this grid is TPU, thermal polyurethane that I 3D printed, and it's a 16-inch grid for the other mirror, and I just had to use a little piece of it and press that into the AccuLap, and you can see the results after removing the grid and then final pressing of the cold press to get good contact. Just makes the sweetest looking lap. And at 16 inches, in my hands, there was no way I was going to make a good channeled 16-inch lap without some sort of tool like this. So anyway, just another way to make a pitch lap. This is mirror number 2. Mirror number 2 was the one where I used the wrong grading. And I was talking to Mel a bunch about this kink that I was getting, and it's just chasing it around. It wasn't working out. It wasn't working out. I hung up the phone with Mel. I looked at the tester. Literally, I hung up the phone. I look over at the tester, 133 lines per inch, and I'd been putting, no, 68 lines per inch, and I've been putting 133 in the matching test. And so you see on the left the 68 LPI grading and the match that you get, and you can see why I was frustrated by a kink. And then I put in the 133 LPI grading that I thought I had, and oh my God, it was way off. It should have looked like what's on the left, but it actually was looking like on the right. So if that whole kind of testing scenario rings some old bells, you might recall what happened to Hubble. I polished it almost perfectly, like Perkin-Elmer did, but with something wrong with the tester. In my case, it was the wrong grading. In Hubble case, it was the wrong spacer used in the optical setup of their null lens. So I'm calling this telescope Disaster 2 Hubble Trouble. All right, and Hubble Trouble is the one on the mount right here, just to keep track of things. Okay, so then I did this pedal lap thing, and I thought it would be good to show all the different iterations of pedal laps that I went through. I said, you know what, this time I'm going to use a spider lap, and I made a spider lap. It was a piece of garbage. I ended up with a really rough figure, and I said, forget about that. And then I got back to sphere, and then I said, well, let's at some point I built a pedal lap where the center was depressed, and you see this blue tape. That's my press, and I press that tape into the AccuLap, and then I get contact around at the edge here, and I wanted to hit the edge, and I did that, and it did the opposite of what I wanted. So I said, well, let's go the other way, and I made one that created some pedals here at like the 50% zone, and that did the opposite of what I wanted. So then I said, well, let's flip it around again. And this time I hit the center and the edge, and it did the opposite of what I wanted. And then I flipped it again. And this is when I was using the right grading. I had this kink, and I'll show you in the next slide. It actually hit the kink and produced a sphere. So I had this figure here with this really nasty thing happening, and I made that pedal lap, and over 3 polishing sessions of about 5 minutes each, you could see that kink just start to go away. Once I got to this step, I'm seeing for real a turned edge. I went back to a full lap and continued on, and I switched back to the 68 LPI grading, carefully noting that, so that I could get rid of the diffraction at the edge and actually see all of the turned edge. And I put tool on top, just did a slight W, kept going, and by the time I was done with 4 polishing sessions that were very brief, I had a nice, smooth, almost spherical mirror from which, again, I could start reparabolizing. So that was the power of a pedal lap, although I still can't explain it. Just some backstory here. In 1988, I worked for a whopping 6 to 7 months at Celestron using pedal laps to hand figure the secondary mirrors on the C8s. And the big difference there is, there's 2 really big differences. One is that they're convex, not concave. The other is that laps were spinning. They were on little motors, and we spun them up at like, 30 to 100 RPM, depending on what we thought we were doing. And I think that makes a huge difference in how the pedal lap behaves. Still getting my head around that. I built a Ross lens, as I mentioned earlier, and did both mirrors at both gratings, and I thought I was getting some nice straight bars with the Ross test, and sure enough, though, you can see that the first one, Disaster, the bands just aren't quite straight. And notice the difference between the 68 and the 133. I think the 133 is really showing some stuff because it has such a short focal length. The other mirror, Hubble Trouble, looks a little overcorrected. It kind of bends the other way. And I have yet to put Hubble Trouble on the dual pass autocollimator, but Disaster on the dual pass autocollimator seems to confirm the same behavior. And the star test in both telescopes seems to confirm it. So things are, the loop looks like it's pretty well closed. I say that at high power, they just don't have the snap focus that I think I want. I want Mel to look at this dual pass thing today if he can, and we'll see what to do next. But they definitely gave good visual images at low power, and later on I'm going to show astrophotography results, and I think you'll agree that it's at least good enough for the mission I have at hand. Recently, September 18th, I refigured Disaster to try to bring that undercorrection more into control. And again, using the 133 bar grading, just a, what did I do? I did 2 rotations, W, 50%, 4 strokes at 50% overhang. So it's kind of like I'm starting from the center and go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 out at the edge, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 back to center, and then repeat to the other side. And I went 2 rotations around the mirror, and probably a similar amount around the lap itself. So it didn't take very long, and you can see the difference, especially in the inside focus image. So you see the straightened bands kind of bending here, and well, more importantly, I got that band to match, the center band to match, and then you can see they're just undercorrected as you go along. And then after I was done, it's like, wow, they all line up pretty darn well. But there's a little bit of twist in this thing. Not sure what that was. It could be residual astigmatism or just the fact that I didn't get the image properly rotated in the tool for the matching. I'm not sure which it is. So I thought I was done after taking many astrophotos. I had a nagging feeling I wasn't. So with only weeks to spare, I took the plunge and got out the lap again. Yet another advantage of having used silver instead of aluminum. There was just no trouble removing that silver. No issue. I compared it to Foucault. You can see in black are the ML tolerance tornado. The before refiguring Foucault data is in red, and after refiguring in green. So I'm right on the hairy edge of acceptable as far as the overall spherical correction is concerned, or aspherical correction. But I think there's still a little room for improvement. And I do think that now there is some astigmatism in that mirror. So wait till you see the photos. Going on. So photo number 1 just was a star test. I took a picture of Veil, of the Veil Nebula. Yes, and I grabbed one of the fainter stars, zoomed in on it, and did a cross section in image J just so I could see how many pixels that star spanned. And there's a lot, right? That was 9 pixels, 20 arc seconds. The diffraction limit is 2.2 arc seconds. And I knew I had some undercorrection at that point, and possible collimation error, possible astigmatism, and this is what was nagging me and caused me to refigure. So after I refigured it, there is Vega, and that spans. It's a different camera, so we won't count the pixels. But instead of being let's go back one slide. Instead of being a 20 arc second full width half max, it is a 5.7 arc second full width aftmax. And I figured, well, now I'm starting to deal with atmospheric effects, and I don't know, really what the thing is doing. But the next step is to put it on the dual pass autocollimator and do the same test again. So anyway, and then this was right after refiguring before I silvered it. I went through focus, and this is where the astigmatism starts to show up. And I can't tell if this is undercorrected or overcorrected. Mel, at a glance, can you tell me if inside of focus, outside of focus, which way is this thing?
So on the left,
Yep.
inside of focus,
Yep.
and you have that bright green.
Yep.
Shown there. So that zone is coming to focus too quickly and is overcorrected.
Overcorrected. Doggone it. Because it was undercorrected before. Mm-hmm. All righty. There'll be a brief pause in my presentation while I digest what Mel just said. All right, so I made some mechanical upgrades to Disaster, and they were fairly significant and worth talking about. Number one is I changed the focuser to a Moonlight 2-inch, and it is, you can see behind me here, it's on the dual pass. So that was, that was kind of the whole point, is like you got this Bird Jones with an 1.25-inch eyepiece and a corrector lens that stops it down even further. I mean, come on. So I put in the 2-inch focuser. I had to 3D print a curved interface plate to mount the flat base onto the curved tube. I put in a larger secondary for the purposes of astrophotography. I needed to get the focal plane pushed out, so I had to push the primary up higher inside the tube. Needed the larger secondary to accomplish that. I added a laser finder, which I'll demonstrate right here. Green light on the ceiling, if you can see it. That thing is all you need with a short focus telescope. Quite powerful. I put in a coma corrector. I tried a P2, a P1, and a Beta MPCC. I 3D printed a button-off mask, and on Disaster, I sanded off all the glossy finish, thinking that I was going to powder coat it, and I liked it so much, I just left it the way it was. So, besides, it was more befitting of its name. I mentioned respacing the primary. I actually went way too far, and I put the primary up in about 1.5 inches, and then I ended up backing it. I ended up removing the spacer that I put in there and simply mounting it on the wrong side of the original mounting plate, and that was just right. The laser pointer is dimmable. There's a little pot on the back of it, 10-ohm trim pot that dims this thing really nicely. And I did that simply not to be annoying out at the next dark sky star party I go to. There you can see the focuser with the P2, an eyepiece, and then with the camera on that. Okay. One thing I had to do, there's the spacer, which I got rid of, but there's this backing plate that is outside the telescope. It's on the back side of the mirror cell. I actually had to grind that down on my belt sander so that it could go inside of the steel tube on this telescope, but it wasn't very much. It was just, I don't know, 0.5 millimeter or so, and I got that done in 5 minutes and got it in there just fine. So it seemed very natural to want to try astrophotography with this thing. It has a lot of advantages over a telephoto lens or some other astrophotography rig. Number one is that it's f3.5. And you go out and look for an f3.5 astrophotography system, and you're going to have trouble finding one. There's plenty out at f4.5, 5, 7, that kind of thing. And 127 millimeters of aperture is quite big for wide field astrophotography. There's a lot of red cats at 70 to 100 or something like that. I'm not really well versed in astrophotography. I just got to say, number one, I am not an astrophotographer. or at least I wasn't one until this summer. So, and I have no interest in pursuing astrophotography. So a lot of things that I might say will be a little weird sounding or flat out wrong. Correct me, you astrophotographers. I have a tracking mount, a Super Polaris on a German equatorial mount, so there's no excuse not to give it a try. I have a Fuji XE2 mirrorless camera right here, nice DSLR, but it's not an SLR, it's a mirrorless camera. So there's just the sensor right there. It looks a lot like an astrophotography camera in that regard. 3 coma correctors to play with. And finally, and this was really the point, is I advise 2 high school astronomy clubs, it turns out, one at Ida B. Wells in Portland and the Northwest Academy in downtown Portland. They're starting up an astronomy club, and I'm a co-advisor there. And I just figured that all the high school kids want to take pictures. You know, you show them a picture and you say, I took that. And they're like, wow. And that you go to a star party and there's kids running around with their cell phones trying to put them up to the eyepieces. And stop doing that. You're wasting my time. But on a nebula, you know, the moon's okay, but on a nebula, really. So I loaned Hubble Trouble to a recent graduate with the goal that we both learned something this summer. And that was my motivation. So again, I said I'm not an astrophotographer. F3.5 parabola at 445 millimeters focal length has a lot of coma over a focal plane of an APS-C size sensor. So then you put in a P2 and you get residual off-axis astigmatism, which turns out to be closely related to the field curvature that the P2 induces. And Teleview says so. I'll show you the quote. The other challenge was that I'd rather put my eye on the eyepiece than the camera at the focal plane. So when I went out to dark sky sites, I just got frustrated and I didn't actually get any good images from a dark sky site. But wait till you see what I got from home. The astrophotography is all about my inner engineer, and that was satisfying, but it's not, to me, the same thing as doing astronomy. So, and then Hubble Trouble never got used, so we have no results from Hubble Trouble, but okay. So, and then the math says there's good reasons to do this project. So I'll not dwell on this, but the quick comparison is that at F3.5, you got an Étendue of 94, and relative to an F7 at the same focal length, it is, you know, close to 4 times more Étendue and 4 times faster exposures. That is a dang good reason to try astrophotography with this thing, especially if you're going to do this with high school kids that want their results faster, right? You got a patience problem. I thought it would be interesting to compare it to the Celestron Origin. The Étendue there is 24, a true field of 1.5 degrees versus 3.6. And you know, the Origin is one heck of a great scope, you know, for the money, to be able to bring that out, plunk it down, turn it on, and then get images. It's really impressive, and clearly this is not that. But boy, the optics of a good f3.5 5-inch scope, they're formidable, to say the least. Okay, so this is a video, and what we're going to look at here is in the lower left-hand corner is the center of the sensor, and so I've cropped this video to just the outer quarter, just one quadrant of the sensor. And so here's the very corner of the sensor, and you can see that in this video as I play it, you should see the stars go to focus and then go out of focus again. So we're kind of going through focus. And look, especially right here in the 70% zone, you'll see the stars get round and then elongate again. that is the residual astigmatism that the P2 produces. Okay, this is not an unfamiliar aberration to anybody who uses a P2 or a P1 for that matter. And so I thought, well, let's at least try focusing the camera in this zone instead of in the center of the sensor. And doing that, this is the same picture. Wait, hold on. There we go. This is what I was taking a picture of. So the center of the sensor was M31, and we're focused, in this ring around the 70% zone. And you can see that the stars, the trade-off you make, of course, is maybe it's a little fatter stars in the center, but it turns out not that much, and pretty darn tight here around the 70% zone. But then way out in the corner, wow, we got these big elongated stars from the astigmatism. So what do we do about that? Well, it turns out that TeleVue says for focal lengths shorter than 1200 millimeters, remember I'm at 445 here, you might find some field curvature. In general, we recommend APS size formats, which would typically yield 90% illumination over a 30 millimeter diagonal chip. Okay, TeleVue. You just told me that if I'm using an APS sensor, I should have a focal length greater than 1200 millimeters. Well, that looks like a big honking daub to me. And I got a tiny little thing here. So what do I do? Well, I put this, I got out Oslo, and you're seeing some ray traces right here. So what I did was I created a convex focal plane kind of artificially just to show you what it looks like. And this is the field curvature of a P2. It's convex. And then I said, well, if I oh, and I know it's convex because of the video I just took, because I knew which way I was going on the focuser. Okay. So then I said, well, if I wanted to do a field flattener, what might that look like? Well, it turns out that a plano-convex lens of the right focal length can create a concave focal plane. And so you put the two together, you should get a flat focal plane. This is all a simulation. This is not real optical design, but I'm using the tool just to describe the effect. Now I'm going to show you some real optical design. This is the behavior of a plano-convex lens. I'm using a perfect lens to drive the lens to a focus. And what I want to see is a convex focal plane. And I want to see what the astigmatism is doing. Well, look at that. The tangential astigmatism goes convex. And it's the tangential astigmatism that was left over when I was all done with the photography. Don't worry if you don't understand tangential astigmatism. I'm not going to explain it right now, but this is the one I needed to worry about. And well, my gosh, it turns out they're almost a perfect match for each other. In addition, is this convex lens actually shrinks the focal plane a little bit, so it reduces the focal length by, it turns out, 13%, which is almost exactly compensating for the focal length increase that you get with the P2. So that was really exciting because oh, and let me just show you, here it is. And I brought it with me. I'll pass this around if you want to look. I 3D printed myself a little 2-inch camera adapter, stuffed a lens in there. It's AR coated both sides, and got that lens up to about 18 millimeters from the focal plane. And that's how I modeled it, and that's how it works. And it did really well. Now, with a DSLR, of course, that spacing will be a lot bigger. Yeah, Mel?
Off the shelf.
No, this is not an off-the-shelf lens. I'll explain that in a minute. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, so with the DSLR, you have a longer spacing between the housing and the sensor, so you might get different results. I haven't modeled that yet, but that's easy enough to do. And then the other thing is I need to get a metal adapter. It's on order. It was supposed to be here yesterday, but it didn't come, and I can't show it to you. But a metal one, and then I can put that lens in there, and then I won't break the 3D print like I've done twice already. It's a little dicey hanging your camera off a 3D print, but it worked. Okay, so this is the result of setting the P2 to setting H, putting in my field flattener, and taking a bunch of subframes. This was 150 subframes at 5 seconds each, no filter, ISO 6400, properly calibrated with flats and darks. And you can see how the stars way out in the corner are just nice and tiny. I'm very happy with that. Now, you're going to see some pictures later on that don't look quite so good. And I believe the reason is simply that I'm not an astrophotographer. But one thing I was careful to do here is not overexpose the stars and not hyper process this image, because I was not trying to bring out any nebulosity. So I'm not doing a bunch of contrast enhancement and histogram stretching and all that. When you do that, you start revealing the halos around these little stars. And remember, this is overcorrected, according to Mel, and might have a little astigmatism in it. So it's not as perfect as it looks, but it certainly made a huge difference putting in that field flattener. Okay, so here we go. This is a photo of the North American Nebula. I'm using the P2, no field flattener. How do you pronounce this company's names? SVBONY? SVBONY, says Howard. Okay. SVBONY multi-narrowband filter. I'm very impressed with this filter. It has a narrowband pass around 03 H beta, another narrowband pass around H alpha, and then a big fat band in the near IR from, around 750 to 850, something like that. And I did an hour total exposure, 30-second subs. And here in, the very north edge of Lake Oswego, Southwest Portland, so plenty of light pollution. And wow, look at the nebulosity. This is what I show the high school kids, and I'm like, yeah, I want to do that. But you can see without the field flattener, of course, we've got some elongated stars out here in the corner. Then I put in the field flattener, and the stars get nice and tight. It's a kind of different processing, I'm sorry, but you also see that the nebula got a lot smaller. I got more field here, and I'm getting the pelican up in here, if it's showing up, yeah. So that made me very happy. Then what did I do is I put the, oh wait, hold on. Oh, then I went and took a picture of the veil. Okay. And 445 millimeter focal length APS-C sensor, all of the Veil Nebula except for the extensions way down here. Wow, that's something from the city. Wow. And one filter, color, one filter, getting rid of the light pollution. That filter's something special. And it's cheap. SVBONY. Then I put in the MPCC and under the same conditions, and that thing just doesn't work at f3.5. So, oh well, I tried. It looks like it undercorrects, if I got that right. Okay, so we come sliding into the end, and I said I was going to say something. Let me just skip a slide forward and make sure. Okay. I'm going to comment about that field flattener now, Mel. The field flattener is my custom design, but I didn't design it as a field flattener. I designed it to fulfill the need of running out of quinsight lenses. And I sent that design off to a company in China whose name I can't remember. And I bought 500 of those suckers. And they're AR coated both sides. They're gem-like quality. Boy, they did a good job. They all met spec. And I said, well, what happens if I try one of these in my camera, 42 millimeter diameter, and it fit just perfectly? It was just like, wow, how lucky can you get? Now, can you get one off the shelf? I can tell you this, you can't get that lens off the shelf. It does not exist. And even if it did, the price would be way higher than what I'm paying. Yeah, Dan. What's up? It's in an undisclosed location, Dan. I don't know what you're after, but oh, well, you can buy them off of my shelf. Yes. That is, yes, I got 500 of them. And yeah, if you want to get into this, I got a slide on that I'm holding for the Q&A, because I don't want to get into sales pitch territory, but there's a thing here that might happen. All right. So in summary, I flipped 2 birds. And nobody's mad at me. Yay. All right. They're fast astrographs. They're not the best astrographs in the world, but they're called disaster and Hubble trouble. See, what you do is you undersell and then overperform, right? Okay. The parabolization was easier. It was confusing. At the end, I thought, oh, that's supposed to say, I thought I had a process. I think I still have a process. I should have updated this slide because I went back and refigured, and by golly, it worked to the point of overcorrecting it a little bit, but okay, I'll take it. Astrophotography was not the intent, but it became the thing by the end, and now I've got some high school kids interested, and I think we're gonna see some things over the course of the next year. The P2 has field curvature at the short focal length, fixed it with a single element lens, and it restored the f3.5 performance. The MPCC, I'm sorry, just doesn't work. The SV Bony multi-narrowband filter works great in a light polluted sky. Astrophotos of quality level does not suck, achieved under urban skies. The does not suck in quotes I stole from Jerry Oltion. So my process here is in doing one of these telescopes is you parabolize and silver a mirror, you add a good focuser, you respace the primary mirror so that you can do it for photography. You don't need to respace it if you're only going to go visual. Increase the secondary size accordingly, add a coma corrector, add a field flattener if you're using a paracore, make a Banich mask. I didn't show the Banich mask, but we all know what they look like. It was easy enough to 3D print one of these things and go to a website where you can calculate one of these things, and mount it all on a good German equatorial, and away you go. What's next? So I have a 6-inch at home, donated by Jerry Oltion, f3.3. He took the optics out of one of these things and is now using it as a trash can. There he is, putting a used Kleenex. It looks like a clean Kleenex to me, but okay. And I thought, well, that one's going to be called Trash Can Jones when I'm done. I want to make it look like an actual trash can. I got a piece of, what do you call it? Air conditioning conduit. It's 8-inch diameter, galvanized steel, and I'm going to work with the metal shop people up at the high school to see what kind of features we can put into it to make it really look like a trash can, and then mount the optics in that thing. And okay, and then of course, the most important slide for this kind of a forum is what worked well versus what would I do differently. And well, I thought the whole idea worked really well. The field flattener worked surprisingly well. The AccuLap worked really well. I love it much better than pitch. You know, your mileage may vary, but boy, AccuLap for me. The collimating screws on this scope work better now than the original system because now I put it on springs, and it used to just be the 2 counter pushing screws, and those are so hard to work with. I learned astrophotography well enough to teach high school kids, and you know, I'm proud of that. I don't want to really become an astrophotographer, but now it's always something that I can look back on and go, well, if I ever want to take a picture again, I know how to do it. And now I can teach the kids. I built a scope worthy of instructional use, possibly better than that, and I kept the cost way down, especially relative to an equivalent Newtonian astrograph. And I think there is one or two out there. I found one that was out of production now. A nice like 6-inch this format fast astrograph, but I don't know where you can get them anymore, or even what they would cost. What didn't work so well, I said, well, nice try, maybe next time. I said, get a flat and use dual pass autocollimator for indoor star testing. It's here, it's too late for the presentation. It's sitting right behind me and I can demonstrate that. The pedal laps didn't work out as well. The laser on there isn't aligning quite as easily as I'd like, but that can be improved. I should cut the tube instead of moving the primary on the inside. There was a little hesitancy to cut the tube until I knew what I was doing. So that can still happen. There is no room for a filter wheel and a P2. So you're not going to do the kinds of astrophotography that you would do with a high quality astrograph unless you figured out a way to do a different focuser or something like that where you could get a filter wheel in there, or if you wanted to just simply remove the camera, change the filter, put it back in, refocus, and that I don't even want to go down that path. And I never got a chance to put on a real astronomy camera like a ZWO or better with an APS-C size format sensor. That's a very expensive camera. I'm hoping maybe someday somebody says, hey, Rob, I got one I can loan you. Greg raises his hand. Thank you, Greg. That's what this is for. All right. Yeah. And that is it. Questions? How did I do on time? Looks like I did 45 minutes. Okay. Yep. So we got 15 minutes for Q&A. What?
Just FYI, guys, you started this on the wrong Zoom. So there have been a bunch of people on another Zoom waiting for the session to start. So a lot of us missed your 45 minutes of presentation.
That's really sad to hear.
I don't know if it got recorded at your end, but
Yeah, Zoom said it was recording, started the Zoom session.
Yeah, as long
Yeah,
as it's recording, it'll be on YouTube. So
okay.
Are you
all right.
you obviously connected to Zoom now?
So Howard's explaining that we do have a Zoom recording. It will be up on YouTube. And gee, I'm sorry, folks. Well, thanks for tuning in. Howard.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you
you
guys
managed
all
to get the
have Zoom now?
afternoon and the morning Zoom links reversed on the agenda.
Oh,
So
yeah, that's possible.
And so if there's a
Okay.
concern about running out of time on Zoom, Howard, you definitely want to make sure that the afternoon one uses the morning link if this one is going to be at capacity.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you're all hooked in now, but I'm sure a lot of people gave up and went away.
Okay.
That's too bad. My apologies. That's my bad. Okay.
All right. Well, Howard, I'm just going to have to give you a spanking later, I
Yeah.
suppose. Well, all right. So
So
let's,
I do have a question.
yeah, let's hear your question.
Are you planning to do a lot more of these conversions?
Well, possibly. You donated one to me. It's
Yeah.
not quite the same scope, so it'll be a little easier. It's a 4-inch instead of a 5-inch. I do have a slide. That's my next backup slide. And I'm saying if you want to pursue this too, but you want some help, I'll consider doing the following with my copious free time. Yeah, right. Parabolize your Celestron Power Seeker 127 spherical mirror and apply silver to it. 3D print a focuser adapter if you need one. 3D print a new mirror spacer. Forget that, you don't need it. 3D print a larger secondary holder if you need it.
What?
Go on mute, guys. 3D print a camera adapter for your P2 if you need it. Go on mute, please. I hear people in the background. Please mute.
Hold on,
Please
it might have done that on my phone.
Please
Hold on.
mute. If you can hear me, please mute. That sounds better. I'm talking to you, Dan, you loudmouth. Supply a field flattener for your P2. I will do that gladly. And make you a dimmable laser pointer, complete assembly with AA batteries. The field flattener and the dimmable laser pointer are exclusive to quinsitespectre.com. There's my sales pitch. I'll say no more. Thanks, Howard.
Thank you, Rob.
All right. Any other questions? Yeah, Robert.
Seems to me, like you said, I think Orion used to sell some Newtonian astrographs, and they're no longer around.
Right.
They might exist at Aperture or something, someplace like that, but
Yeah.
I seem like size. I don't know if you have you thought about the like size ratio. I mean, this 5-inch seems interesting to me because it's like it's not too heavy, it's pretty compact, gets a lot of light. Little astrophotography setup. You wouldn't necessarily have to buy an old Bird Jones. You could just buy like either an unilluminized 5-inch spherical mirror blank and gravelize it yourself.
Okay. I'm going to summarize your question for the people who probably couldn't hear it.
I guess I'm just
Okay.
asking if you were starting from not having a Bird Jones scope and having just a blank spherical.
Starting
mirror,
from a blank spherical mirror and nothing else.
Size.
Oh, would I choose 5-inch if I had nothing else? Would I choose 6-inch or 4-inch or 10-inch or what? And that's an interesting question. I did this. Remember how I started out? I got 2 of these donated to the high school astronomy club, and we decided we couldn't use them. There's got to be 100,000 of these things out there, sitting in closets and garages and garage sales, and it just seemed like that is it is the ultimate hobby killer scope, the Celestron Power Seeker 127 EQ. And it just seemed like that is ripe for doing this project. So I guess the answer is no. I wouldn't do anything other than the Celestron Power Seeker, just because there's so many of the damn things out there. But if anybody else wanted to do one of these things, well, I've just given you an example of how that might go. Have at it, folks. Doesn't matter to me. But also, if you have these things and don't want them anymore, I'd take a couple more and try this. But I'd much rather do it and then sell them back to you with added value. You know what I mean? I don't know what the price would be. We'd have to work out something. But I'm retired and I could always use an extra buck. So why not? They weren't that hard. And you're not going to get so this is a Sharp Star 130 millimeter f2.8, I'm sorry, HNT, which I don't know, something Newtonian. It's probably got a corrector lens in it and who knows what else, but I discontinued. So there were very high quality astrographs, carbon fiber tubes and all that. And this is not that, but I still think it's turning a hobby killer into something that's far more exciting, and that I think high school students are actually going to gravitate to and not leave in the closet.
The Unistellar EV scope is like a 4¼ inch.
Unistellar 4¼ yeah.
Like your photos.
They do? They look better? Well, thank you. Okay. Oh God, I don't think it's that high, but I think it's more like 16 megapixel sensor. They're like 2 or 4 megapixel. Okay, there's that. Yeah. The étendue on this thing is huge. It blows away the Origin. So I don't know what the Unistellar is, but it's probably not that big. So.
1.4, 1.6.
Okay. Okay,
It was the same as the 1.1.
yeah. Okay. And that's Greg Jones just commenting on unistellar sensor resolution. And it's not, yeah, those scopes. What do we call those scopes in general? No. Not the Bird Jones, the unistellar and the origin and the smart scopes. Thank you. Smart scopes are great, but they don't have the resolution and the sensor size of a DSLR, of a good DSLR, like a Nikon or this Fuji camera that I've got. And so there are advantages to using a big sensor, but you can't swap out the sensors on these smart scopes, right? So anyway, any other questions? We got here another 10 minutes. Yes.
I'm thinking about the Aculap. Do you have any more impressions about how it acted? Does it cut a little faster? Does it conform well? Does it than Google's, or for instance?
Yeah. So I was using Google's 55 on my 16-inch, and but I was using it in my garage in the winter, and it was hard as heck. And I had a lot to learn about pitch lapse. When I got all done, my wife was mad at me for all the little black dots in the shower, and I don't blame her. They were even on the bed sheets, like, golly. So I said, you know what? Aculap is clear. I'm going to try that. So to compare, well, number one, I got the soft Aculap, and it's plenty soft. And I did this in my home office because a nice little 5-inch, I could just easily set that up in a spare bedroom and not have to worry about, messing the place up. It behaved very nicely. I don't cut. I don't use razor blades on my laps. I press with that grid.
Good idea too.
Yeah, it's very clean, and I was just pleased as punch with the Aculap, but I can't say I don't have any more experience than that with the Aculap. I will do another 16-inch, and it will be an Aculap, and then I'll have an answer for you. Yeah. Okay.
It's purported not to lose its volatile. So next year it'll have the same consistency that it does now.
Reported not to lose its volatiles. Yeah, I heard that. And the low odor, I think, goes along with that, right? Because you can't smell it.
Fresh sheet of pitch in the morning cooking.
I love to smell a fresh pitch in the morning. Yes. Ugh. Brings back memories of Celestron. Yes, it does. I might have to just have like a pitch candle in the living room just to. Yeah, there you go. My wife will be real happy. Okay. Any other questions? Thanks for not burning me at the stake over this. I really appreciate your interest, and I yield the floor to the next presenter. Thank you.
So we just got on the wrong Zoom link.
Evidently, I
Did you
switched.
want to go back to the morning one then?
Well, everyone's tuned into the afternoon
Well,
one now.
Let's check.
Except the people coming on.
It might be worth a pause to
Yeah.
go to both Zoom accounts and say to tell everybody on the one to go to the other.
Right, whatever one you.
Give them a
Yeah.
chance.
That's a good thought. Oh, okay. Well, let's see. We got
They can catch it on YouTube later.
we've got a number of people here.
So are
Oh,
you
yes.
thinking of flipping the meetings over then? Because you should send out an email at least if that's what you're going to do. And I know that I've texted a couple of people about these meetings, so I'll text them as well to say, oh, flip them around, just in case they don't get the email. So is
Well-
that what you're going to do?
Well, that's what we were talking about. I'm not really sure what the best thing to do is now.
I'm gonna get on the other Zoom on my phone, and I'm gonna say, hey, everybody who's here, go to the afternoon Zoom right now.
Okay.
And then we'll just have them join.
All right. So we'll stay here. Rob is going to inform everyone who may be on the other Zoom link to come to this one. And so we'll be able to continue as we are right now.
Yeah.
And again, my apologies.
Yeah.
This is totally my screw up.
This can't possibly fail, by the way.
Of course not.
Well, I've just tried to log into the other session, and it says the host has another meeting in progress. So there's a
Oh,
The host
So-
has a meeting in progress.
yeah.
but it doesn't tell them where to go.
That could be, because you'd have to be clever and want to check the other one. So I can't even do the thing that I want to do. Okay.
Yeah, because we have one host, so
Yeah.
Howard had to quit this Zoom to go to the other one to tell them to come back and then restart that one.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So
So,
maybe the better thing would just email everyone we can.
yeah, okay. So I guess the plan then is to, oh, here we go. There we go. The plan is now that we'll close this Zoom session. We'll go to what should have been the morning session. And so if you could all go ahead and close out of here and go to the what is on the schedule as the afternoon session, which evidently is the morning session. No, the other way around.
It's
Yes.
so confusing. You're correct.
Yeah. So yeah, let's let me see here. Let's okay. There is what's under more.
So Howard, we're going back to the morning session, correct?
Well, hold on there.
Okay.
I'm trying to see where another session is actually going. Yeah, because when I started this session on Zoom, it said another meeting was open, and I closed that one, thinking that was somebody else had opened a later session, because that happens all the time. That is not an unusual thing. So, yeah, I don't see where another video.
Center bowl.
Yeah, I just don't see that. Well, okay, so I think, from my perspective, it's best that we just continue here. And because it's almost 10:30 and it's almost time for Keith to start on his. I'd rather stay on schedule. I mean, this is recorded, and it's unfortunate that that other people that probably have given up on this morning session, but we'll get back on track for the afternoon session, and hopefully everyone will be here. As it is, we have about a dozen people, which is only a few less than we had last night. So I don't think we chased away too many people. So Keith, if you're ready to go,
Sure.
I say hop in and let's get going.
Okay, great. Am I full screen at your end?
Not yet, no.
How do I do that then?
You have to share your screen. So down at the bottom.
Yeah, I was going to share the app.
There we go.
Okay.
It's starting to come up. There we go.
Okay. Right. Okay. Let's go. So. Okay. Well, thanks for having me. I think we've worked out I'm the second furthest attendee. I'm very close to London in the UK. I think Marcos is in Austria, so he qualifies as being the furthest. Shame I can't be there in person, but here we go. So I'm going to talk about digital finders, which has been my passion for the last couple of years, and their impact on visual observing, which is what I am. I am a visual observer. Don't want to go to the dark side of astrophotography. So how can this improve your or our deep sky of observing? First, a bit about me. A long time ago, I did a degree in astrophysics. That was 1977, I graduated. A nice career in engineering and science. There was certainly, when I graduated, there was no work in astronomy and astrophysics back in those days, not much anyway. About 25 years ago, just about when children were off the budget and everything else, I rediscovered practical astronomy. And it had moved on. So I built an 18-inch Newtonian on an equatorial mount in a 3-meter dome in the garden. Big project. Then the bad skies here near London, so I did 10 years at the Winter Star Party. That was nice. 20 consecutive years at the Texas Star Party. And the last few as the ATM program director, which was quite an honor being a Brit. Met some great people there. Haven't been since before COVID. I developed my love of Mustangs. We would always hire one and drive across. So you'll see that's the Mustang in the Davis Mountains near Fort Davis. So what interests me? So there's my, call it a Dobsonian. It's more like an Altaz, really. There comes a point when it stops looking like a Dobsonian. I continue to rebuild it. It's on its 5th iteration at the moment, trying to minimize the size and weight and make it more stable. And using my engineering skills that I've learned in my career to do what I can. Finally, after 5 iterations, I think I've got it where I want it. It's a twin roller drive on altitude, belt drive on azimuth, driven by my own scope dog. A bit more about that bit later. But as I said, a couple of years ago, I got interested in digital finders. And that's really, it's moving very fast at the moment with processors, cameras, software development. It's all moving forward very, very fast. And but it's all the astrophotographers who are using it, not many visual observers. This picture there, bottom right, is my development lab in the corner. In the middle, you can't really see it below, is a Perspex telescope emulator. It's got motors, gearboxes, encoders, and output shafts. And then the 2 screens above it where I do my coding and I can simulate. So during the day, I can simulate a telescope pointing anywhere in the sky, drive it. It's got variable backlash, and that's how I manage to do my code development and still get some sleep. There's a beautiful British day at one of our star parties, and you can see a Mustang has appeared. A right-hand drive Mustang has appeared in the UK. So the telescope has to fit into the Mustang boot. That's the challenge, which is why it keeps me busy. But actually, star parties for me are about code development and testing. And inside the caravan, at least 2 screens with a couple of Macs, doing my code development, doing the testing. And there's a long cable going from the telescope into the caravan so that I get full access to what's going on during the night. I can change the code on the fly. So, right, are you a hunter or are you a studier? Some people like the challenge of star hopping. You know, they like nothing better than to work across the sky, get to the targets. Others just want to get there and see it. But me, I want to see the elusive, push the boundaries. And that's quite a challenge, certainly if you're star hopping. So the classic basics for seeing the elusive. First, you've got to find. So you've got to find the correct star field at a suitable magnification. And that's the problem. Sometimes if you're looking for a planetary nebula or something that's at the limit of visibility, you're going to want to have quite a high magnification. So you've got a small field of view. You need to be in the right position. Otherwise, you're looking for a needle in a haystack. And remember, we're looking for something that's elusive, that's on the limit of visual perception. So it might be in the field, it might not. You really need to know you're in the right field. when you're in the right field, you can start, averting your vision, catching the glimpses. And after a while, a few minutes, you should be able to look back and acquire almost immediately. It becomes imprinted in your vision. And finally, you can have a look, try some filters, and go and do some stuff. Quite a torturous process. And a lot of people give up somewhere in the first stages because with a high either their magnification is not high enough and they're just not going to see, they're not going to see it at all, or they've got too high a magnification, they've got the right magnification, field of view small, and they're lost in space trying to find the target. So the driver for me for looking at these really difficult objects is the necessary magnification locate the object. So now there's an Altaz telescope, Herschel's 20-foot. I like the way they used to call it by the length, not the size of the mirror. It's a 17.5-inch mirror, which wasn't too far from where I live, actually. So there's William Herschel. His first 46, he called them sweeps, which is what he would do each night. He would sweep a region using the mechanics of the telescope to produce a sweeping action. And in 46 sweeps over 6 months, he only found 2 new objects. He's working alone and is making his own notes. So we can imagine actually that he's distracted, he's got no dark adaptation, if he's writing, he's got a candle out. So had no red lights in those days, I don't think. But then his sister, Caroline, started taking his notes. We have stories of her leaning out the window while he shouted at her, leaving her at the telescope. And he had an assistant now to move the telescope. He then produced an average of 2 discoveries per sweep. That's 50 times greater output by changing his observing routine. He only had a 15-minute field of view, yet he was still able to discern the faint edges of sort of nebulosity, like the North American nebula. Absolutely amazing observer. So, but what are the limits of seeing? This is a small sidetrack, but it's important to get us in the right direction for looking for these elusive objects. There's a paper that I can thoroughly recommend. It's on my website. Andrew Crummy wrote it 10 years ago now. He looked at all the previous work, all the classic work by Blackwell Curtis. He went through it all, but then he did it all again. But now he puts in the effect of the observer, the eyes, the equipment, light pollution. And he came up with a new way to analyze the human threshold. And if we apply it to Herschel's telescope and the NGC observations, we can see the curved line is the threshold. So you shouldn't, looking above that is quite difficult. The horizontal axis is the area of the target. The vertical axis is the magnitude of the target. And there are some of they're probably not very uniform targets where he did manage to see them. And actually, I suspect we've not got his visual performance right. That curved line should probably be a bit higher. So he really was a great observer. He didn't miss many that he should have seen. Can we match his performance? So I think there's a paper there that I referenced that you might want to go and look at. I presented to the Web Society a couple of years ago. By locking myself in my caravan and taping over all the LEDs, and staying in there for an hour, and then coming out with red goggles on, I managed to push my limiting magnitude down by 1.8. I was seeing almost magnitude 8 stars visually. So the getting dark adaptation can be done. It takes a bit of work. It's a massive change to your observing experience. And then you need to use averted vision, because there's up to 2 magnitudes difference across the rods in your retina. So if you're going to use averted vision, you need to know where the target position is. Otherwise, you're searching an eyepiece field of view, and I mean, eyepiece field of view these days can be very large. We're talking about 82 degrees or 100-degree apparent field of view. Searching that field of view with averted vision is very difficult. An example, Bonvitens 5.3, it's a very uniform planetary nebula, surface brightness of about 21.2. In my 18-inch, as you can see from that threshold curve, it's right on the limit. In my eyepiece field of view, 3 out of 4 people who I invited to have a look, we were all dark adapted, couldn't see it. But when I told them where it was in the field, immediately 3 of them could. So the message there is, protecting a dark adaptation and optimizing your averted vision is critical. So now on to digital finders. Finding the target, a new approach for visual observers. And like Herschel, sometimes we need an assistant. Digital finders are like car sat-navs. They're getting you to your destination without the searching, no charts or maps, no getting lost, no distractions, less stress. That's, of course, unless you're a star hopper, and then you probably don't want one. So recently, past and recent, the astrophotographers amongst us have been using plate solving for years. They've had to do it because of the small camera field of view, no eyepiece, etc. And they want maximum time on target. They want hours of imaging. They already had the cameras and the computers, so it was a bit of a no-brainer. And a lot of development went into plate solving for them. Many plate solving applications will run on small computers, and now we've got them running on smartphones. Celestian's StarSense Explorer was the first commercial use of plate solving finder for visual use, I think. And we even have people buying, you can only have it on a telescope, so people are buying the telescope with the StarSense Explorer and ripping it off the telescope to fit it to their own scope. Not easily integrated. And you're then looking at a smartphone screen on the edge of your telescope right by your eyepiece. So it doesn't do much for your dark adaptation. But it showed the popularity that people wanted and needed plate solving technology to help them find their targets. Some of you may know there's a product called PieFinder. It's proving very popular. It's a self-contained plate solver that you can clamp onto your telescope, and it sort of steers you to the target in a kind of push-to mode. Helps you find your target. But there were quite a few options out there. So this tries to summarize them. On the left, you've got various types at the top. Celestian StarSense PieFinder, and there's a new one on the block called StarHopper. So basically using plate solving technology, and some of them, the PieFinder in particular, has got an accelerometer in it. So when you're moving the telescope and the plate solver won't work, the accelerometer takes over and tries to estimate where the telescope might be. MEMSTAR and AstroHopper are entirely inertial, and they try and use accelerometers and compasses to determine where the telescope is. And basically, they're not nearly as accurate. You're talking about a degree accuracy, perhaps half a degree to a degree. But what's nearly universal about all those at the top is they require an app on a phone or tablet to run them, and nearly all of them use their own catalogs or require someone else's catalogs. eFinder, which is what I'm going to talk about, is a plate solver, and as you can see, it doesn't have an app and doesn't have a catalog. So how does it work? There's an early version of it bolted to the bottom of my telescope in experimental form there. You can see it's got a handset with a nice red display to protect your dark adaptation. And primarily, it's a plate solver for the Nexus DSC. If you're not aware of the Nexus DSC, it's an encoder control system for telescopes. And you do the alignment on the telescope on a couple of stars, And then after that, the Nexus DSC will tell you where you're pointing. It'll steer, it has catalogs built into it, and it'll allow you to steer you to an object. It gives you directions. If you have a motor drive, it'll tell the motor drive which direction to go, etc. So that was my first attempt at a plate solving for visual use. Really closely integrated with the Nexus DFC. It had a reversionary mode live, so that if you didn't have a Nexus, it would just point you in the right direction. But also quite uniquely in the first case, it was open source code. From the outset, I made the code publicly available to anyone who wanted to use it, try it, change it. So what does I'm describing eFinder, but what does a plate solve for visual use do? The first thing you need to do is align the plate solver, the eFinder, to the main scope. And I believe I'm the first to have developed a technique. The plate solver is quite intelligent, really. It can not only solve the field, it can tell you the names of the stars that are in it and which are the brightest. So I came up with a process of you point the main telescope at a bright star. If you're the northern hemisphere, you pick Polaris, so it's not moving, it's easy to point at it. And this is the only thing that you have to do accurately, is point the main scope at Polaris or another bright star accurately. Press OK, and then the plate solver does its work, and within a second or so comes back and says, I think you're looking at Polaris. And if you say OK to that, it remembers that offset. And that's all you have to do. That is aligning your plate solver to your main visual scope. And whatever accuracy you achieve, so if you had Polaris slightly up to the left in your eyepiece when you hit the OK button, that's where it's the plate solver, it's going to put your telescope thereafter. So you want to be fairly accurate at this point. It's a simplified, more accurate initial two-star alignment. I put star in inverted commas because the classic way of aligning an encoder system is to point at two bright stars reasonably far apart from each other. And at each star, you have to accurately point the telescope at the star. If you have any error in your pointing, it'll work out to be an error in the Nexus calculation of telescope tilt and position. So, but if you've got a plate solver, you can use a facility that actually what the Nexus and many other programs like it want. It's not actually the star. They want the RA and DEC of where the telescope is pointing. So now you just point the telescope at a clear area of sky, press OK, move the telescope 60 or 70 degrees in azimuth, and do the same thing. And the Nexus will take the RA and DEC from the plate solver as the two star alignment points. So you haven't had to point at a star or anything. You just had to point at clear areas of sky. So effectively, there's no error in the input of the two-star alignment process. And you can do it really fast. You can do this in 30 seconds easily now. You can do your initial two-star alignment, or you can do 3 stars if you wanted to. And it's more accurate. So with the plate solver, you can now display the current telescope position in RA and DEC. Or that can get sent to something like Sky Safari if you're using that. What for me is the most valuable thing, if you're a visual observer and you've used something like the Nexus or the Argo Navis, is that when you're near a target but you can't see it, there's something called local sync, whereby you probably can't see it because the errors in your telescope mount, lack of orthogonality between axes or your alignment errors, means that you're slightly off. So what you do is you move off to a known bright star, sync the Nexus or the Argo Navis to that star, and then come back again to the target. And in theory, you've narrowed out some of the errors. But now with the plate solver, you don't have to move away. You've got to where you think the target is. You do a sync, i.e. you do a plate solve. Now the Nexus knows exactly where it's pointing, and then you can just make the adjustment necessary to get on to the target. So now you can see I'm closing loop back on knowing where the target is in the eyepiece field of view if you're going to hunt for the elusive. And you can refine, there's something called go-to ++ if which I'll go into, but so if the telescope has done an automatic go-to a target, you can get it to do a plate solve at the end of that first slew. It now can see the error it's produced, and then it'll readjust itself. And now you can see that display at the right shows it'll do another plate solve and tell you what the error is, and that's the pointing error now with respect to the target in degrees. So you're talking about an order of an arc minute in this case. In fact, the accuracy of this final go-to ++ is really down to backlash in the drives. Because the plate solver will have determined where you're pointing to about 15 arc seconds. But most telescope drives, certainly on the larger Dobsonians, etc., have got an arc minute or so of backlash in their drive system. And it also has, because it's got plate solver, you might as well do a live mode where you can send the position direct out to a Sky Safari on a tablet, and as you push the telescope around or drive the telescope around, you see the cursor move on the sky. It's a bit laggy, which I'm going to come on to. Plate solvers don't work while the telescope's moving. I think go-to ++, as I've coined it, does need explaining, but actually I think it's going to be a very common process. So a normal go-to, you're not quite, the telescope will have an error in its starting location. It doesn't completely know where it is. As I said, there'll be errors in the mount. It might have moved a little bit since you were last observing. You then do a slew. So you say, I want to go to a galaxy, and your telescope may not be level, it may not be orthogonal, and so you'll end up not being quite at the target. So you've got an error there. Now the classic way, as I said, is to go off to a bright star, sync on it, I remove the errors, and then come back to your galaxy or whatever you were looking for. The problem is because you've moved away and moved back again, you've removed some errors, but you've introduced some more. So you still won't be perfectly on the target. You'll be a lot closer, but you still won't be perfect. Particularly a small error. So go-to ++, again, we start the same. We're not quite sure where we are. We still have errors where we're slowing. We don't quite get to the target. But now we do a plate solve at the end of the slew. And now we repeat the go-to. But because we're very close and we know exactly where we are, the second go-to has a very, very small error in it. I mean, we talk typically the distance will be less than a degree, or should be less than a degree that it has to do. And so the plate solver determines where you are within a few arc seconds. And so the accuracy of nudging back onto the target is really down to the backlash in the drive system. And this correction only takes about 1 or 2 seconds. So if you're standing at the bottom of the ladders or you're waiting for your telescope to slew, basically you don't notice this extra bit. It's entirely automatic. And it's very simple to apply because all the interface between the plate solver, the eFinder, and the Nexus is, first, can I have a sync? So I'm going to tell you where I'm actually pointing. And then it says, can you just repeat the last go-to? There's no tricky or move left, move up. It just says, just repeat the go-to. Because the Nexus and the telescope drive, they know how to go to a position. It's just that they didn't know where they were when they started. So it's a very, very simple process. So moving on a bit, after my first foray into that E-finder. The Pi Zero, Raspberry Pi Zero came out with a enhanced version and I put an OLED display and I put the whole thing into a single box. And I then realized I got feedback from observers that that's what they really wanted. They hate cables on their telescopes and they just wanted a single box solution. So this one is actually powered from the Nexus DSC. The Pi Zero basically is the same processor as a Raspberry Pi 4, but clocked slightly slower. So it's actually quite powerful. The problem with it actually is it doesn't have much RAM. It's only got half a gigabyte. I switched to something called the Tetra 3 solver, plate solver. This is developed by the European Space Agency as a satellite star tracker, so for aligning stars. And on you can see there on the display on the E-finder light there that it's actually done a solve. This is an extension using CEDAR in this case in 1/10 of a second. That's a blind plate solve in 1/10 of a second on the Raspberry Pi Zero. It's pretty fast stuff, really. Faster than we actually need. Still had a live mode. And again, I put all the hardware and software design out on the internet. About 100 have been built worldwide. And they've been fitted to scopes, as far as I know, from a 10-inch to a 42-inch. There's a group in Arizona and another group in Pennsylvania who have really taken them on board and have built quite large numbers of them. And this gives me good feedback on how they're using them for the visual experience. They're being used in push-to, they're being used on drive systems, ScopeDog Server Cap, and Cytec drives. And for the latter two, I'm getting reports back that people are getting a go-to accuracy of better than an arc minute. On my own telescope, I get 15 arc seconds, but then I've got the twin roller drive and it's very accurate. But generally, people are able to position the target, the object, with known accuracy in their field of view to within an arc minute now. And that's for almost any of these big scopes, which is new territory for them. So, based on the feedback I was getting, there's a new kid on the block, Nexus E-finder, and you'll notice it doesn't have a display or any controls or anything at all. It's about half the size of E-finder Lite. I'm working with Serge, who owns and runs Astro Devices down in Australia, and I see he's logged in. He's 4 o'clock in the morning, I think, for him. Well done, Serge. So we've fully integrated it into the Nexus DSC Pro. And if anyone of you have got one of these things, you'll now see it appears with a new icon on its main menu called Electronic Finder. So it has been completely integrated into the working function of the Nexus DSC. And it's going to be available as a DIY build still, or some feedback we've had is that some people just can't solder to save their lives. And certainly if you're on the back of a Raspberry Pi, the pins are quite close together. And so they're going to have a ready-built version for them. And the plan is to be at NEAF next year for a big launch. So here's some screenshots. As I mentioned, the first thing you do is you point your telescope at, say, Polaris. If you're, sorry, Serge, I know you're in the Southern Hemisphere, but here in the Northern Hemisphere, we're Polaris, but it doesn't have to be. Point the main telescope at Polaris, press OK, and you can see the sort of feedback you get on the display. It's confirming the star, so you've got the right one, and it's also telling you what the offset is between the E-finder and the main telescope. The field of view of the E-finder is about 12 degrees, so you don't have to be super accurate in aligning the E-finder with the main telescope, but you do want it to be stable. Clearly, you don't want it to move around. but ideally you want to get it somewhere near the center of the field of view. 2-point align, as we said. So now we've got some really clear text on that, telling the user how to do the 2-point align. Point the telescope at clear sky, press OK, and then it says repeat that. And when you've done that successfully, it even tells you to move the telescope by more than 60 degrees in azimuth and press OK. And then that's your 2-point alignment done. And honestly, you can do it in 30 seconds now. We have a screen which I'm calling assist here. So you generally, once you've set focus on the thing, you won't need to change it. And for most night sessions, you won't need to change the exposure values on the camera. But if you do, we provided a little screen here, and you can see there's a little thumbnail image of the star. There's a point spread function through the brightest star in the field. Your current exposure and gain values, the number of stars it's found, and the peak signal. And you can use those from that screen. You can change the exposure up or down just to optimize it or to tweak the focus. You can also, if you want, see the image. If you connect a tablet to its Wi-Fi, you can see that image as well. So that would help with focusing, give you a feeling. So that's a bit of an assist screen. I've had that on eFinder Lite for a while, and people like to use it. There's a test mode, so that if something's not working or you're not quite sure, you can go to a test mode. It has a couple of stock images, and it will solve them for you and show that everything's working all right. You probably just left the lens cap on if it's not working. I've done that. You can set up the Wi-Fi of the eFinder from the Nexus, either in infrastructure or hotspot mode. A little setup screen. And there's a little bit of info there about which version number. So as you can see, it really is integrated. It's not a separate piece of kit. So now they're working as one. So if you've got encoders, you saw the field of view thing there moving. You've got immediate responsivity. You've got a resolution, but importantly, you get a readout while the scope is moving. If you're using an app like Sky Safari, or if you're using the push to arrows on the Nexus, you need a position readout while you're moving. And I can't see in the foreseeable future plate solvers ever doing that. They need exposure times of longer than can be achieved with a moving telescope, and the cameras just aren't sensitive enough yet to, or probably ever, to achieve plate solving on the move. So the plate solver adds a really high degree of accuracy against the true sky, so we know exactly where we are with respect to RNDEC on demand. And as I've explained, faster setting up, faster target location, either in push to or go to mode. And importantly, for an observer, it gives him or her confidence in the position of the telescope. If you're looking for something in the field, this will tell you you're in the right place. Just keep on looking. So many times in the past, I've been looking at a field and I can't see it. Well, I might not be in the right field, because so many star fields look the same when you're looking through a high magnification eyepiece. And you can spend 20 minutes, and I used to do this at the Texas Advanced Observing Program with Larry Mitchell. Some of those objects, you need 20 minutes just to get into the right star field and know for confidence you're there. It does require, it's not a silver bullet, because the plate solver, the eFinder, does need to remain aligned to the main scope. And if you've got mirror flop, if you've got a secondary mirror sag, if it's a very fast telescope, this isn't going to solve that. It'll help you measure it. And I've had a few people come back to me and say, there's something wrong with my plate solver because it's not consistent. And when we look at the results, what it's telling you is that if you move, you can actually use it to tell you what your secondary mirror sag is as you change the altitude of the telescope. You have a tool now to tell you to do that. but it doesn't fix it for you. And again, it's open source. So in fact, any computer can use it, and the protocol is open. What are we doing for time? Yeah, we're doing all right. While the busy slide there, there were lots of examples coming out. Push to scopes at the top there. It is really trying to re-emphasize that if you just got a plate solver, or you've got no ability to see anything on the move, if you add inertial sensors to it, which is what Pyfinder done, you can see on the move, but it's now very laggy. But you do get the accuracy, so it's a good step forward, and it's very easy to fit. And there is some people are liking it because it means they don't have to fit encoders to the telescope, and that is a holy grail for some people. But for me, as a observer going after the challenging, plate solver and encoders together gives you the dynamic response and the very high accuracy. And then if you've got drives, you've got the ability to do this go-to plus. There's a lot of people, we talked about, the previous speaker mentioned smart telescopes. There's Dwarf, EvoStar, C-Star S30 and 50. A lot of people are buying those as just to see what they do. And of course, that's what a C-Star, if you're familiar with it, is doing. It's an integrated plate solver, drive, and camera, all in the one package. And if you get the integration deep enough, the thing becomes, I'm not going to say sort of idiot proof, but it just does what it's supposed to do on the tin. It just works. And a lot of people are buying these things because you can stick it on the ground, and a minute later, well, or like 3 minutes later, it's producing great images all on its own. And it's because of the deep level of integration that was achieved between the software, the hardware. So anyway, people might want to come back to that one when we publish the slides. Here's an example of full integration. This is my own scope dog drive. And you can actually get the plate solver to run on the scope motor drive processor. Plate solving with the latest Tetra 3 plate solving code from ESA isn't very processor intensive. It might run for 0.1 or 0.2 of a second, and you use one of your cores of your processors up. But that won't trouble most motor drives because they're not really working very hard. So actually, most telescopes have already got a drive computer in them. So in my case, just plug a camera directly into the telescope drive box. And now the handpad on the telescope now tells me exactly where the eyepiece is in RNDEC. One of the things this can do is that actually, I've seen people who said, oh, I don't need this because the encoders on my telescope always put the object in the field of view. And when you look at their telescope, it's built like a tank. Okay, really solid, very heavy, absolutely stable. And yes, if you built it well, and you've got the axes orthogonal, then perhaps it will do that. But that makes for a very heavy telescope, certainly won't fit in the boot of a Mustang. And people can't manage those, and they become very expensive and very unmanageable. So it's a tool here to actually making mounts lighter and cheaper. So winding up. So I hope I've shown that with very accurate scope positioning, you don't need to look at maps. And now you can use averted vision because you know it's in the center or it's just off the center. You know where it is. If you know where your sweet spot is in your averted vision, you can use your averted vision to its maximum. And now you can start pulling things out you probably would never have seen before, just given up. I'd like people to push their dark adaptation further. It's a bit of a personal hobby horse, but it does require very good, rigorous attention to lighting, use of tablets, yeah, etc. Makes a massive difference to the visual observing experience. I've had people at star parties around me absolutely amazed at what I've managed to see. And it is just down to a bit of effort in protecting your dark adaptation and a slightly different observing routine. So I think from now on, digital finders are going to completely revolutionize scope drives and the user experience. There will still be people who want to do star hopping, but from now on, it's a bit like the sat nav in your car. If you want to go somewhere, this telescope is going to take you there exactly, and then you can enjoy yourself looking at it. There's a sub-arc inaccuracy. Really does make scopes lighter. And the answer is close integration, and I think we're going to see more of that in the future. That's the way forward. So for me, there's back to my thing. So it takes almost no time to find, little time to see, and now I can spend all my time looking at the target, and I feel much better of it. Just a little reminder: I'm not trying to sell anything here. It's a self-build option. People can go to my website. There's been 100 built so far, and I think it's going to be more now. Amazingly, I was quite surprised to find this sort of scope dog is my first effort in coding and telescope drives. There's someone driving a 42-inch in Arizona with one, and he's getting pointing accuracy of an arc-minute with it, and this thing weighs half a ton, I think. And the reason for that is the code's available, and he's been able to modify it. So all the code's available on my GitHub. We made 3D printed designs available for the housings. That's where I'm at. So inclusion, challenge yourself and look deeper, I think. Thank you.
Questions from how about there in Zoom land? Serge, is there anything you'd like to add?
I do have a question. Howard, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, cool. So are there any projects that integrate the eFinder with OnStep that you know of?
I know one person who's basically gone to the command line and yes, but is bypassing all the display and controls and doing that. I mean, in its latest incarnation, it's basically command line instructions down a USB cable. So you can say, please grab a frame now, and then please tell me where you are. So yeah, the opportunity is there for someone to integrate it. Yes. It doesn't have ASCOM or Alpaca interfaces. If that's where someone was going.
Yeah, that was going to be the next question over here. So perfect timing.
I don't think my coding is certainly up to that, but to some extent, I've seen a lot of people struggle a lot in ASCOM interfaces and them dropping out. And to me, my personal route is I think something like this plate solver needs to be integrated into the drive. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if someone, well, we've already seen ZWO put the plate solver into the same case their camera now has a computer in the back of it with a Wi-Fi transmitter. I wouldn't be surprised if one day soon it actually gets into the camera sensor chip itself into the into the processor on the back of the camera sensor chip. To me, it needs integration, and I think astrophotographers and people who are screwing together equipment with all different bits of kit, they need common interface standards. I mean, perhaps someone would like to do that to eFinder. I don't know, to write the Alpaca or ASCOM interface modules. But certainly, I'm a self-taught programmer, and I could definitely, I won't do it.
Wow.
Is Craig there? Craig Sterrett.
Yes, he is, but Dan Gray has a question for you right now.
Okay.
Hi, Serge. Nice to see you.
Hi.
Yeah, that was really awesome, Keith. I have 3 questions. So I guess the first 2 are kind of related. How do the focal length of your little lens and the pixel size, what is the resolution of the pixels? I guess that's my question.
Yes, that's as an interesting question. I actually started off with a 1 degree field of view telescope. Then I went to a 5 degree, so that's a 50 millimeter lens. And now I'm at 25 millimeter lens. It's actually a CCTV lens. It costs about $20. It's a very cheap lens. And it's matched to the Raspberry Pi HQ camera on the latest eFinder. What we find is the wider field of view, something like 10 or 12 degrees, is the key to the fast solve time. And also telling the plate solver what that field of view and the pixel scale is exactly is a key to the fast solve time.
Okay.
And the pixel size is about an arc minute from memory, but the plate solver does better than, so it's doing centroid estimation on the image. So it actually, what we get at is the about a 15 arc second accuracy from the plate solver itself, from the code, with the sensors I'm using.
Okay, on a related question, you started out with 1 degree, then you 2, and then 5, I think you said.
Yes.
At 5 degrees, would you get more accurate solves?
Yes, in theory you would get you get twice as good.
Okay.
I've taken a sort of pragmatic approach that this thing is being screwed to a Dobsonian in the middle of a field,
Yeah.
which is probably waving around in the wind, and actually having 5 or 10 arc second accuracy probably is a bit of a waste. And what you start getting is, if you start getting more expensive lenses, longer exposure times, and slightly less tolerance to bad skies as you push down the field of view. It's no the StarSense Explorer that uses a mobile phone, a smartphone. It's very wide field of view and can almost plate solve on the move, because it gets easy with the wide field of view, and it gets really hard. So people with something like a half degree field of view, or even smaller, on their telescope doing astrophotography, can get plate solve times in almost a minute sometimes, because it's so many stars and so many index files to look at that it can take long. So I think I've done over the years. I think for the practical astronomer in the field or in the back garden, the sweet spot is about a 15 arc second accuracy.
Okay. So my next question is, I mean, you have all the tools, and the software is quite complicated. It's way over my head. But you have the ability to take all sky, like points all over the sky, and turn it into a mountain model. And if you don't have backlash or mirror flop, as you talked about,
Yes.
but you have correctable errors, then, after you do add a few points, your go-tos are going to be accurate enough anyway. Have you considered that?
I did. And then I realized what was the point, because I can do a go-to and then plate solve and then finish it off. The extra bit is so quick. It's like a second to finish the first slew image and then move that extra little bit. Because the problem is you could build a mount model and you could actually do it in the background while observing over a session. The thing could just be getting the information. But that assumes that all the errors on your mount are systematic and not changing. And so they might be changing during the session. You might be pushing on the telescope. It might be sinking into the ground. If you're in the UK on a star party, your telescope is gradually sinking into the mud. So you can model the systematic errors. But if you've got something like encoder backlash, it can't do them all. So I say, well, why bother? Why not just do a go-to, plate solve, and then repeat the go-to?
Okay, well, I think that if you're going to do long exposure photography, it could be a real benefit. But for visual use, I think you're 100% right. Anyway, awesome.
Yes.
Awesome.
Okay. As I mentioned Craig, because I think he's brought along.
Yep. So this is
yeah.
this
So
is
I've
great, Garrett. Yep. So I brought one of the new ones, like Keith is currently showing. That's the Nexus eFinder, and then I also brought my previous version, which is the standard eFinder with the display in it. And I mean, I'm a huge fan of these eFinders. My scope, it has orthogonality issues, and one night when we were testing out eFinder, we did go-tos to a couple dozen objects with a 3.5 millimeter Nagler on a 3200 millimeter focal length scope. So, and it was almost dead center every time. So, I mean, within 90% of dead center. It's just unbelievable difference it made for my scope. And then also another huge advantage for me was the 2 areas of the sky alignment instead of 2 star, because I would have to climb up a 10-foot ladder, align the star in the eyepiece and allow for drift so I could then run down the ladder and hit the OK button on the Nexus. So my 2 stars were never accurate. Now, no big deal. I just push it to one area, hit OK, push it to another area, hit OK. I'm done. So huge fan.
That's a great advert.
If you have questions, feel free to ask me. But
Thanks, Craig.
Yep, you've done a lot of great work. Thanks.
Thanks. And I want to thank Serge, who's really supported me on my campaign. And I think Serge, Astro Devices, he's also got hooked on it, and realized and has had a few sort of evenings sessions with it, and he's done a lot of work in writing new firmware, and he's really committed to it. Which is what was necessary to take it forward.
Excellent. Yeah, this is fascinating stuff. So any more questions here? Yep. One more.
One more.
Hey, Keith. I'm just
Hi.
curious, what's your favorite observation that you feel like the eFinder got you that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise?
Well, I'm probably working through the Bonvitens catalog. I mean, there's only 3 of them, but I've managed to capture 2 of them so far, and I certainly would have never. The one I talked about was surface brightness 21.2. In UK skies, that's quite a challenge. It's a very uniform planetary. If anyone has or hasn't seen it, it's got no distinguishing features at all. It just sits there trying to hide in the background mush. And we managed to find it with the eFinder one night a year ago. And people are still talking about having seen it because they had spent 5 years having it on their list. And the thing is, you know, okay, we found it within about 2 minutes. Now, that may be spoiling it for some people, but on the other hand, you know, you don't get professional astronomers spending an hour trying to find an object. They tell the telescope where to go, and then they look at the object and they photograph it and then they study it. And so it's kind of, it gives a tool to amateurs to really be able to, I think, push the boundaries of what they're looking at a lot further.
Okay. Any questions from people on Zoom? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Keith. Appreciate you taking the time to give that talk, and also to Serge for getting up so early. Yeah, that's impressive.
Did he stay up?
Yeah, he looks awake. So anyway, yeah, so thank you very much, and we're pretty much right on time, so we'll continue on to our next presentation, which will be Pierre Lemay, who is here from Montreal. Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, so let's get your presentation up here. Okay, so you're familiar with Zoom and how it all works. Sort of.
Yeah, kind of. Can you get the volume of your computer down?
Yeah.
Because I've got some elevator music, which when I hit the, yeah, bring that down to like 20%. I want to talk over it.
Okay. All right, so that's good to hit that because everything works better. And okay, so we'll go back to Zoom and then share. Click on that. Share there. Okay.
And just minimize those windows on the back.
Yeah. Come on. There we go. All right. You can hide that. Push this down over here perhaps.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All here.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. Everybody, Pierre is about to begin.
Okay, folks, we'll start. Okay, so I wanted to talk about my 20-inch telescope, tracking ball scope, because it's kind of unique as an instrument. It's one of the largest ball scopes ever built. I think there's at least another one, I think in Hawaii, a 20-inch ball scope. There have been other ball scopes built, even professionally. There were large ball scopes built in France for experiments, but they weren't using quite exactly the same design, and they've been decommissioned since then. So I'm going to talk about the design goals that I had for this telescope, which I built many years ago. Making the mirror, the support, the ball itself, which is quite a challenge. And as you can see, the other subjects there. And for some lot more additional information and pictures, you can go on my website, and I have a lot more detail. This is a summary of some of those details, some of the information on the ball scope, but you can click on that, the presentation when you get it, and you will find more information there. So the initial telescope design goals were, I had a 12-inch telescope at the time. This was in mid-90s, and I was looking for something larger, 20 to 24 inch. I wanted it to be transportable in a hatchback car to a dark site. I was looking for a 75-pound optical tube assembly, which was quite a challenge at the time. Back then, a 20-inch telescope was a much heavier telescope. One-man assembly, I wanted to be able to do that myself. Very important, no tool for telescope assembly. All my telescopes are designed normally that there's no tools. Everything is hand knobs and everything is captive hardware. So I don't have to put little bolts in a bag and lose them when I get to the site or forget them or something. Everything has to be in 1 or 2 units, and that's it. I was looking for equatorial tracking. I wasn't sure what design it would be, what the scope design would be at the time. Ended up being a Newtonian, but that wasn't obvious at first. Flat-footed observing, I was hoping to be able to have a scope that would be that would not require a ladder or maybe just a stool, and a rotating tube, which I used a lot. The 16-inch telescope at our club in Ottawa, Canada, had a rotating tube, and I thought that was really neat. It had a rotating upper end. I wanted some kind of way of placing the eyepiece in a comfortable position, and I wanted a 2 eyepiece turret, which also this 16-inch club observatory a long time ago when I was in Ottawa had that, and I'd seen that on other scopes, and I wanted that as well. So there were many other design goals, but these were some of the main goals that I was looking for. So I ended up building a Newtonian telescope, and it ended up being a ball scope, but that wasn't obvious at first. And it ended up being a 20-inch because I found a 20-inch there were want ads in Sky and Telescope at the time. This is in mid-90s, and a fellow some of you may have known, Dick Nelson, he was the owner of a company called Optical Craftsman. They made telescopes that they sold to amateurs and maybe observatories, I don't know. And he was going out of the business, and you can see a picture of my daughter, my 2-year-old approximately daughter at the time, sitting on the blank when it got to my place from California. A lot of the glass was removed, and this is a bit unusual, was removed for grinding by well, first of all, I'll just talk about the back of the blank. If you look at the picture on the right, you can see that the edge thickness on the right side of the picture is a little thinner, about a half-inch thinner than the left hand. So when I got the blank, this was like, it's as if the blank had been cast, and with the mold was a bit canted, and it ended up with the glass being, the mirror was not symmetrically the same all around. So the first job was I had to remove that glass, and I did that by grinding with a small tool and bring it down to a half-inch thick edge at the back and equal all around. That was one thing, and the next step also was to build a grinding machine. At the time, I didn't know about some of the more common grinding machines that people were using at the time. So I saw the article by Donald Dilworth in Sky and Telescope about his relay lens telescope, and he had a basic, really simple design. So I just copied that, and I built that as a grinding machine. It evolved since then. It's become much more sophisticated today, that machine. And also at the time, by the way, just something I want to mention is that at the time I was looking at building a relay lens telescope similar to what Donald Dilworth had built for a 20-inch. I thought it was a nice compact scope. I'd looked through it. I'd used that scope at Stellafane, and so I corresponded with Donald at the time, and he actually came up with some improved designs. And I was looking to build a scope where I would be able to observe from inside, kind of like have the scope outside and with a relay lens bringing the eyepiece in and observe from the warmth of an observing room, for example. That was the initial idea. It ended up, I could have gone that way, but it felt too complicated. I had to make a couple of relay lenses. He was willing to help me along, but eventually I chickened out and I decided on a normal Newtonian. But as you will see, the project became more complicated eventually anyway. And you can see in that picture on the right where I trepaned a hole in the center of the mirror, a 3.5 inch diameter hole, which is where the mirror would be supported. There's a 7-inch flat portion on the back, and then it tapers off to 1/2 inch for the 20-inch mirror. And that's how I did the preparation for the blank for grinding. The next step was curve generation, and okay, this is where I don't know where I got this idea, but this is a little weird. But I went to a tombstone maker and brought a template with the proper radius of curvature, and I said, "Could you sandblast this mirror to give it this curve approximately?" And he was like a cousin of mine, far reach. I didn't really know him, but my dad said, "Oh, I know a tombstone maker." So I went to see him, and he did this for free. It took him 20 minutes, and he went from flat to F4, F3.8, or F3.9 with just sandblasting, and he would put the template around it. And I said, "Be careful not to dig a hole somewhere too deep. Don't keep your sandblasting there too long." And it took 20 minutes, and the mirror was F4, F3.9. I think I was hoping for F3.8, and then I smoothed out that curve with this small motor turning at about 150 RPM with the same pipe that I'd used for trepanning, and some 80 carbo, and just kind of Blanchard curve grinded my way to a roughly sub F4, F3.9, somewhere around there curve. So that's how the mirror was prepared and rough grinded, curve generated to get the shape that I more or less wanted. The next step was to do a good grinding, rough grinding, fine grinding, and for this I used my machine that I had built. Built a cement, Portland cement tool, about 2 inches thick, very heavy. Glued some of these tiles that we bought at Wilman Bell at the time. These ceramic tiles, and the mirror and all the work. And I knew at that moment that all the work had to be done mirror on top, at least for rough grinding, polishing, because it would be that would keep me kind of away from astigmatism. If I tried to work it with the mirror upside down or with the tool on top, it would have been difficult to support the mirror and support it without distorting it, because it's kind of, anyway. So I applied the same thing that we're doing with meniscus mirrors 20 years before I even knew of meniscus mirrors, and I did it this way to try and keep the mirror from being suffering from asymmetry. I'll talk about it, but I did end up with some astigmatism anyway, but I didn't really know about it. So due to the mirror's central perforation, when I polished as Donald Dilworth had suggested, I just removed the pitch from the area around where the hole is and just polished away that way, exactly like I did here. Parabolizing was done with sub-diameter tools. This time, after grinding, polishing, making sure everything was okay, I turned the mirror upside down. That diagram on the bottom left shows how the mirror was pitch blocked. I think that's the expression, using pitch to block the back end of the mirror to a pipe flange. And I had a pipe coming in through the turntable spindle was basically a pipe with just an ordinary thread at the end, and the mirror was glued for about 1.5 years with pitch to this flange. And whenever I needed to polish or test, I would just grab the whole glass, unscrew it, and then place it on the test stand vertically, do my test, and then pull it back, re-screw it onto the spindle, and keep polishing. So I used a number of sub-diameter polishing tools. If I had, and I will be doing it again, but when I do it again, I will make a larger tool than the 8-inch tool that you see on this picture. The problem with say a 12 or a 14-inch tool to smooth out the curve was that I had this hole in the middle, and I didn't want to, when I was pressing, I didn't want to create a lump that would then damage the surface. So but today I know that I can match a larger tool by pressing it at different locations around the glass when I'm doing the cold pressing, and then start working on it, or maybe just remove the pitch like I did with the large full-size pitch tool. So that's how I parabolize the mirror. Using a Rossnall lens, I got one image, I think the best image I have of this. Too many lines. I could do it again. I could take the mirror out and test it again with much better technology than I had at the time. I have better technology today, but at the time I used the Rossnall lens. You can see that there's a turn down edge or turned edge. Turn down edge in the case of the outside edge. It's about 3/8 of an inch wide. And of course, there's a turn down edge around the hole, the central perforation. But that's hidden by there's a nut, a 4-inch nut that covers that 3.5-inch perforation, and that's not an issue. But you can see that it's very smooth. But what this doesn't show is that there is astigmatism. So this telescope is not very good on planets or double stars or high power stuff, because it's the moment you go above 200, or even when you just try to focus, you can see that there's astigmatism in the mirror. And so I'm looking forward to retesting the mirror with all the new equipment that I have today, and the new test methods that have been developed over the years, including interferometry and all that. This is basically an F4 mirror, so this can be easily tested with all of those techniques, and that's going to be a goal in maybe 2 years from now. One of the questions that I asked myself when I saw the astigmatism was, is it due to my polishing or problems, or polishing errors that I might have made, or was it due to the actual mirror bending? Because there aren't that many conical mirrors that are used by amateurs. And I mean, we have a lot of conical mirrors up to 14-inch in Schmidt-Cassegrain telescopes. But for a mirror this large, it's not that thick. It's 2.5 inches thick. When I started out, it was 2.5 inches thick minus the sagitta. The question was, well, is it deforming? Is it deforming because of under its own weight? And as you move it in a certain angle, is it creating this astigmatism? And so I had a friend a work colleague who did a lot of finite element analysis, do the math for me. I'd done that in college many years ago, but I wasn't up to the able to do that today. And following his modeling, I'll summarize this, but basically, we had a discussion on cloudy nights with a bunch of other people, experts who did finite element analysis as well, and optical engineers. And we concluded that blank had sufficient strength, but when it does deform, it would deform into just another parabola. You just refocus, and it should be the case. But in a recent Cloudy Night thread, we had another discussion with other people, and it's not quite clear. I'm not sure how much astigmatism is generated just by the fact that this glass is the shape it is. We know from Dilworth's experiments with his 16-inch that it was okay, but we also know from Mario Mata. He's an astronomer on the East Coast, and he's built a 32-inch relay lens telescope. Mirror professionally made, conical mirror with a very complex shape. It's also conical, the back is conical. And in this CN discussion, we found that his mirror did deform, and they had to add a skeleton support near the center of the mirror to keep it from deforming. Not deforming that much for astigmatism, but maybe a quarter wave or something, and he didn't want that, so that he had the mirror support modified. So I don't know about mine. There's still questions that I need to answer, and that will come in a couple of years when I rework this mirror. Now, the mirror support and collimation is very unique. As I said in the first slide where I talked about the objectives, and I wanted this to track, and I wanted it to be, I didn't want the eyepiece to be too high, so I wouldn't need a ladder and all this. So all of this meant I needed to have the mirror as close to the inside hemisphere as possible, but I still needed to collimate it. And I couldn't drill holes under the hemisphere because the telescope tracks, and I'll talk about this in a minute or two, but the hemisphere had to be whole and not perforated. So you can't just stick an Allen wrench through the back and collimate from the back. I had to collimate from the front. And since I had a perforation, I said, I'm going to use that perforation. And you can see here on the, you can see on the bottom drawing, the bottom left drawing, how the mirror, the basic idea is that there's a fixed aluminum plate at the bottom that I'll show you how that is attached to the hemisphere, which is basically the base for the collimation of the primary mirror. Now I have three, you can see on the pictures on the upper right, you have three approximately 3-inch diameter gears that mesh with a spline, which is attached to rods that go through the mirror and stick out up on top of the mirror. When you rotate one of these splines, it rotates the large gear, the 3-inch gear, one of the 3-inch gears, and it moves, and that gear is attached to a fine threaded bolt, which bolts into that large plate. So when you rotate one of those splines or one of those extensions, that gear is rotating and it's lifting the mirror up on one of 3 sides, and that's how you collimate. And then there's a central bolt, which you can see on the left picture in the center, which when you finished collimating, you tighten that bolt down, and it locks the whole mirror support system to the position that you've collimated it to, and the mirror is free floating in this aluminum support. So that's how I collimate. By the way, just for the fun of it, those 3 aluminum gears, I couldn't find anything on the market that would that I could put a screw through it and everything. So I had to build those, and I hand cut the gears on those three large spur gears, or large spur gears, by printing if I needed, I don't remember how many teeth there are on there, but say I needed 60 teeth, I would print print out with AutoCAD a paper with 60 lines on them, stick them on the aluminum blank, which I would have cut on my lathe, and then using a hacksaw, I would just cut until I heard the blade touch the paper, and then move to the other one and kind of align them approximately, and then use a file to make the little gear teeth, and it worked. And it took about 20 minutes per gear to do that, and that's how those gears were cut, and they still work today. The splines were. I have no idea, and I don't care. The interesting thing about this as well is that, and I'll show you how the plate is attached to the hemisphere, but once that's collimated and locked in, unless you remove the mirror for cleaning or whatever, you never need to retouch that. That collimation of the primary mirror never moves. Doesn't mean it's perfect. I'll talk about that, but it never moves. It's amazing how solidly attached it is to everything. Yeah. The radius, yeah, well, the way I did it is you mean like the bolt heads that stick out and that touch the plate where the mirror? No, because it's flat. Yeah, there's a 7-inch flat on the back of these conical mirrors, so it's sitting on that flat. Yeah, and then.
With that radius, does that have an effect on FDA?
I don't remember. That was 15, 20 years ago, but I don't think so. I think the way he built the model is he assumed that was like a foundation fixed position. Yeah. You had a question? Okay, just stretching.
Yeah. Comments later.
Okay. So the collimation, it says collimation on top there, but anyway, collimation, how I do it. So I collimate from the top, which is really an advantage. And because the mirror is perforated, of course, I can't use a laser that will, with a little a ring on the mirror, because there's no glass in the center. There's a hole. The mirror is perforated, and there's this unit that holds the mirror. So when I want to collimate, I have to use a star. So the second mirror, the secondary mirror is first collimated. That goes out of collimation when I move the scope around. I have to always recheck collimation of the secondary mirror. So it's collimated with a laser. I just put a normal laser in, make sure it hits the center of that large bolt at the bottom, and then I remove the cover of the mirror. I place these extension 3-foot extension rods, which you see here in the middle. The arrow is pointing to them, and when the telescope is looking roughly up, I find a star somewhere near the zenith. And this is a ball scope, by the way. So zenith, we love zenith with ball scopes. So you just move it around. There's no gimbal lock, no Dobson hole. So you just find a star, and you look at the star in the high power eyepiece, and you rotate those extension rods, which are connected to the little bits that come out on top of the mirror. And everything is designed that if I drop one of these extension rods on the mirror, there's a Teflon or a nylon white, that white thing will not scratch the mirror too much, I hope. But I've never dropped one, and I'm very careful. And of course, like I said, I do that once, and And once it's done, I don't need to redo it again until I remove the mirror for some reason. And so I look at the high power eyepiece. I do my collimation. What I do normally is I place the collimated star wherever it goes on the left edge or right edge, or where I can see that they're all collimated, and then I rotate those screws until I bring that image to the center of the eyepiece, lock it down, and that's collimation. Now, there is a problem with the collimation, and it has to do with where those bolts, I think in this bottom left image, where those bolts here touch there's a flange here where the mirror is sitting on a flanged plate, and the bolt heads push on that to do the collimation. But when I tighten the bolt down, the central bolt, there's a bit of movement there, because if I had a thicker plate, I could insert a tight fitting rod that would then have threads, and it would, it wouldn't move much. But because it's a bolt, there's a little bit of movement, and it's kind of unpredictable. So when I lock it down, I can see that the collimation goes off a bit, and that's a problem. And mirror's got other problems, but that are worse than this. So it's something that I would need to improve. So there's a slight mirror shift. One of the future improvements, because this is a six, the truss tubes are a six truss tube arrangement. I could add a collimation by by changing the length of the truss tubes. It's a Stewart platform type arrangement. And that's something that I'm considering doing in the future for fine collimation. Don't know if I'll go there yet, but it's certainly a possibility that could easily be added to this design. Easily be added to this design. So that's how I collimate. Now, how I made the hemisphere, the ball. How am I doing? Yeah, the ball scope was that ball that holds the mirror is a 30-inch hemisphere, 30-inch diameter by 3/16 inch thick. The skin is 3/16 inch thick. It's made of short glass strand epoxy putty, like Bondo, I think it's called. And it's then topped with 6 coats of, I think half a dozen coats of liquid epoxy resin. The diagram on this page shows how I came up with the idea of how to make the hemisphere. This was the second try. The first try, I tried something else. You can go and see it on my website, but it wasn't successful, and it created a hemisphere that was very heavy and thin on one side and thick on the other, and it just wasn't doing well. So I needed a substrate that was the proper diameter, and then I could apply an equal amount of and thick enough amount of putty to that to make it solid enough. So the way I did it was to first I pre-cut some styrofoam, those 2-inch thick styrofoam insulation that you use for homes or basements, and I bought those, cut them off roughly the angle I wanted, and then I built this using just an ordinary workmate type support. I mounted a pipe that went through all the layers of styrofoam and attached to that plate that I showed earlier, that thick plate that supports the primary mirror for collimation and everything else. So when I could then control the angle, and I had a router with a bit on, just a flat bit on the end, so I could control the movement in an arc in one direction, and I could rotate the whole styrofoam structure and putty eventually with the other hand, and just take cuts and then apply some more putty and just build up the thickness that way until I got the sphere I wanted. So you can see in this picture the first part of that. On the left picture, you see the router there mounted on this jig, this sphere making jig, and on the right picture you can see the plate here on the left here is attached. You can see the bolt just sticking out in the center, which is connected to a pipe that goes all the way to the bottom of the, you can kind of see it here. There's a plate at the bottom. There's a pipe that goes through it and attaches to another piece of wood at the bottom. So this is how that was my axis of rotation in one direction. And to cut, I had the other axis of rotation perpendicular with the router. And you can see that on the end of the, there are some nuts here where, that are attached to bolts that are attached to the plate. And those are the anchor points. I wanted to make sure that once the whole thing was built, I wasn't just relying on the Bondo glue gluing to the aluminum. I wanted a solid attachment point so that I didn't want the mirror falling out of the scope with the plate coming off with it. So I added these anchor points, and I applied putty. So you can see on the left picture, there's the router on top of the styrofoam. You can see the plate that's there, and you can see how much putty I had to add there. In the middle picture, I'm adding the putty with a putty knife, and by the way, styrofoam is eaten away by epoxy, so I had to cover all of the styrofoam with just some 2-inch wide tape used for when painting your house, or gaffer tape, I think it's called. So I just added tape just to make sure that no putty would touch the styrofoam, because that would create a hole in the putty, and I would have to put even more putty to fix that. So the hemisphere at this point, you can kind of see it in the third picture, is covered with styrofoam, and so I would add the putty all around this plate, and then I would take cuts with the router, and I would do the same with the applying putty over the whole surface. The bottom part was also had a wooden. The whole styrofoam stack is sitting on a 3/4 inch thick plywood plate, and I had little wood things sticking out on the side everywhere, so that that would anchor that as well. And then I would just cover that with putty, take cuts below, above, and eventually in between, until I made the hemisphere. And the last step was to I took this outside, and I removed the whole hemisphere from the vertical position it was in, placed it horizontally, added a heavy chuck at the other end, and a couple of nails in the wooden plate, which you can't see, but it's I'm turning with my hand. And I would just add some resin with some colorant, some dye in it, to create the hemisphere. And I would just rotate. I would apply it, rotate until it started to gel, started to polymerize, and then I just let it dry out, sand it a bit, and then add another coat and another coat until I had a satisfactory color to it. And then in the end, I cut that plate that I had at what was at the bottom, now is the top, and I just cut that away with a jigsaw and removed the styrofoam, which made quite a mess, by the way. With just a knife, I cut away the styrofoam, just pulled it out, and I ended up with a perfectly formed hemisphere with the steel plate, the aluminum plate in the bottom, ready to receive the mirror. So that's how the hemisphere was built. But then I realized that if I wanted to if I wanted to attain my goal of a 75-pound optical tube assembly, I wouldn't be able to do it with this. The hemisphere was way too heavy. And I kind of realized at one point that I didn't really need this part of the hemisphere. So to reduce the weight, I decided to cut away part of the hemisphere, which is not really required. If you cut away this section here and you mount the telescope like this, you move the center of gravity of the hemisphere to the right, and that's offset by all the equipment that you put on top of a telescope, the eyepiece, the finder scope, the controls. You end up bringing it back towards the center. If you don't do this with a ball scope, because a ball scope has to be balanced up and down, but it also has to be balanced around its optical axis. If not, the eyepiece and everything will bring it always towards the bottom. So the way to solve this normally is you add weight offset on the other side near the mirror. You will add lead shots or something in epoxy. That's how they do it normally. And I looked at it and I said, I don't even need that stuff. And it's going to reduce the weight quite a bit and bring me closer to my 75-pound optical tube assembly weight. So this project, by the way, was a risk from A to Z. I mean, everything that I did here, I had never seen any of this stuff done, whether it's, I had never seen it done. I know it's been done, but trepanning a hole in a mirror, reducing the back end to make it more symmetrical, using a sandblaster for a tombstone maker to grind the center. All of this was risky. I didn't know what I was doing, but I had confidence in myself. So I did it anyway, and this was one of the risky things. Is I had spent 100 hours making this thing, and I decided to cut it up. And so I mounted it on a large ball bearing that I had acquired somewhere, and put some cement bags in the middle of the hemisphere to weigh it down. Mounted a felt tip marker, and rotated it. And I was amazed when I wrote to mark the cut line, and I was amazed how the tip of the felt marker never left the hemisphere. It was that accurate. It was really round, and all around the mark was perfect. It was exactly it was quite round. And then so I marked the cut on the left image, and then on the top I just used a jigsaw again, and I followed the cut line, and I built a new top reinforcement ring to receive the tubes, and that brought the of course the weight down. This weighed about I must have cut about 15 pounds off, plus maybe 5 pounds of counterweight. At least 20 pounds were cut by doing this. It also brings the mirror closer to the outside. One of the problems with ball scopes is that you're placing a mirror in the bottom of a tube, and you can't put ventilation, not with, if you want equatorial tracking the way I did it with this. So by doing this, I was opening up the tube. It was easier to ventilate if I needed to, and that was one of the other reasons why I felt it would be a good idea to cut that away. So I did this, and I got the hemisphere that I wanted. Would I do it again today? No, I wouldn't do it again today. There was a lot of work, but I found this company recently, a couple of years ago, that sell these acrylic domes made of up to 60 inches. I think they make them in all up to 69 inches and up to half-inch thickness, and they vacuum form them, I guess, and they sell these, and you can buy them. They're made in the state of Maine, and there's a Canadian. They're just across the border from Canada and New Brunswick, so you can also order them from their warehouse there. And you can get a 30-inch for about $300 maybe. And then, of course, I'd have to find a way of attaching that plate to that, but that's a relatively minor problem. So if I had to do it again, this is where I would get the hemisphere. Okay, now the upper tube assembly is more conventional, although there are a couple of things that are different. The end rings of the you can see on the image on the right, the end rings are made of bicycle rims that I found that had a 21.5-inch interior diameter, whatever outside diameter, and to reduce weight, I used my milling machine to cut slots, and I have a 2 eyepiece turret, which I'll talk a little bit more in a second here. I have spider vanes that are made of, I don't know if I can get this. Here. I have spider vanes that are made of 10 thou thick shim tool, stainless steel, and they are used to transmit the power to for the diagonal heaters. I don't have a wire going through it. One of the sets of the vanes is plus 12, and the other one is minus 12 volts. So I'm or plus and minus for 12 volt, and they're connected up to the Kendrick heater that I use for heating. So I have the Kendrick heater. I have the Quinsight, which is similar to the one that's on the scope here, which you can see mounted here. It's mounted on top of the eyepieces. In a ball scope, you can use a ball scope either on the left or on the right side, because it's a ball scope. So it's not like a Dobsonian where you're always observing from the left or from the right, depending on where you placed your eyepiece. So this in this design, I placed it right in the center, just on top of the furthest end ring, and I can easily look at a star when I'm searching, and then I rotate my head and the eyepiece is right there. So it's very practical to do it that way. There's also a SkySolve picture with a SkySolve camera, which Pi 4 plate solving camera designed by Dale, which I'm working hard at getting to work. It's getting there. And I have a bit of a weird mount, which I don't like, that's attached to the bottom end ring. I need to improve that, but if I don't touch after I collimate the camera, it works quite well when if I'm not using it with an Apple computer or Apple iPad, because it tends to lock for some reason. But I found recently that we're getting good results with what's it called, when it's not an iPad, it's a Android. Thank you. Seems to be working better with Android. I've got a light baffle extension, which you can see on the bottom here, which stores, when I'm storing it, I just remove that and I attach it to the upper end. It moves off to the side. And the whole upper tube assembly, when it's taken apart, nests inside the hemisphere. And I also have an Aurora filter system, which is exactly the same as the 28-inch, which is here. So focus with that turret. These are helical Crayford focusers that I made.
You have 2 focus.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. There's a double. The bottom eyepiece is the one you're observing through, and the top one is storage. And it's very normally you have a wide field eyepiece. I have a 21 millimeter Explorer Scientific 100-degree eyepiece with a coma corrector, the MPCC coma corrector in this case.
Anybody else on the Zoom meeting can hear me? Hello, testing.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, yeah. So apparently I just got a call from somebody at the meeting and they said the laptop was got hung up. So I guess we'll just have to be patient.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
So I guess is anybody else on the line can hear this? Maybe well, I don't know. Maybe they're trying to restart their computer. But anyway, that's what he said. So I'm gonna just hang on and see what happens. Yep.
It's working now, was out for about 5 minutes.
Oh, working
Audio.
now.
I can hear it.
Okay.
Whereas
All
out
right.
for about 5 minutes and now it's back.
Okay. See you. Thanks. Hmm? I still have no audio.
Yeah, I dropped and rejoined, made no difference. Huh.
I'll go try to rejoin. All right. See ya. I just rejoined and still have no audio. Hmm. It looks like the speaker's audio is on mute, or am I not reading this correctly? Anybody hear me?
Audio. Okay, can everybody hear me? We're almost back in business.
Oh, yeah. Together. It's just yeah, yeah. So, probably gonna be a low rise. Like dendrites, all the other shit. Yeah. Think about in there just like back here. Yeah. Smaller diameter.
And then we'll just skip to wherever I was.
Yeah.
That next slide. It's almost,
We'll just pretend nothing happened.
and you'll splice it when you do.
Oh, it'll be seamless.
Seamless.
I don't know. Support member what? Those are not cute or. Yeah. Whatever.
I also have the 20. Comics of one. It'll free 5. And
Yeah, Brave Approach.
I also have. Oh, you do? Yeah.
No idea.
I'm switching it over. It's a perforated, but not all the way.
Assuming the hair is good.
Mine's cast ray. And slowly getting it out, but I haven't done it all year. I've been working on spectrographs and other stuff.
So you were here.
Yeah, let's go to the next slide.
This one?
I have 10 slides. I thought I had 2 again.
Yeah. Okay, let's get,
Okay, folks, well, let's finish this. Not, you won't get a chance to eat.
okay. We are going to share or reshare. Here's presentation. Okay, and why don't we?
Can you move that thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks. Just click on the.
I went with a line of areas and now it's.
Okay, so I'll try to finish this so we can go to lunch. So I'll go to the truss tubes. I think I had finished. Yeah. So we'll go to the truss tubes. The truss tubes are 6 1-inch diameter aluminum truss tubes, anodized. They were from Moonlight. Moonlight used to sell those. They don't anymore. They're color coded, as you can see. I have a little yellow ring here, and I put yellow or red or blue on each of them. And you'll notice a little something different about they attach at the top, and they attach one on top of the other instead of sideways. It just seemed like a good idea at the time, and it is a good idea. It works quite well, and they're attached 2 by 2. So that's how I did it, and it works. Not too much to say on that. The bottom section of the tube has a threaded rod with a ball at the end, and initially the hardware was plastic, but it dried up and broke up. So I found these copper pipe hardware at Home Depot, which worked. I need a little bit of machining, but they work quite well. And they allow me to adjust the length of the poles, of the 6 poles, to bring the focus, to optimize the focus at the top. And I found I build all my telescopes now this way, because whenever I cut the tube, it always seems to end up cutting it too short, and that's a way of compensating. And it's quite solid, and and of course it's a universal joint, so it works quite well. Now the 2 eyepiece turret, I talked about it earlier. You can see it here. This is an early picture, but I made the two. I have a 2-inch and a 1 1/4 inch eyepiece holder. Because of the indexing mechanism, which is hard to photograph, it's on the right. The eyepiece must always turn in a certain, like the little eyepiece on the which is on the bottom in this picture, must always swing to the right. Because if I swing the large eyepiece to the right, it'll hit that indexing mechanism and it'll block. So it can't go that way. It has to always, the large eyepiece must always go on the left and the small eyepiece on the right. You get used to it when you're using it. I have a handle in the middle, which I grab for rotation. And I made the 2 eyepiece holders are homemade helical Crayfords, and they work quite well. You can see on the bottom picture how my head just clears the large eyepiece on the top. I did some tests initially to determine how I wanted to make that as small as possible, but there's a limit, because your head has to clear the eyepiece, and that was about 5-inch distance between the 2 eyepieces. And when I collimate with the bottom, with the 1 1/4 inch eyepiece, because I put a high power eyepiece in there. So normally the top eyepiece, the large eyepiece, is always there. It's part of the counterweight system of the telescope, so I cannot observe without it being in place, or at least without a weight in its place. And I do have a weight that I use when I take this apart and remove the eyepieces. I put a 2-inch brass slug in there just to get the weight. Oh, and one thing, that last comment, the coma corrector doesn't exist for 1 1/4 inch eyepieces. There's a way of making them using off-the-shelf optics and all this, but Robert Hossein, I think his name is, who created the Houdini set of eyepieces recently, about a year ago. These are coma corrected eyepieces, no need for a coma corrector, and they're lighter weight, and I'm looking forward to buying the full set when they come out. There's only about 2 or 3 eyepieces out at the moment, especially for the 1 1/4 inch ones. That means I won't need a coma corrector. I can use the eyepiece directly. And I don't know if anyone here has used them yet, but comments are pretty favorable on their use so far. So looking forward, because for lightweight telescopes like ball scopes or other lightweight telescopes, being able to not use a coma corrector reduces the amount of weight and the expense that you need, and yet you still have a fairly wide field. These are 82-degree fields, but you don't have that 1.15 time increase in focal length, which you get with the paracord, for example. Remains to be seen how good they are, but if they're pretty good for a lightweight telescope, that would reduce the weight a lot, and that would be advantageous in my case. Because the scope is tracking, even though I have an no coma corrector on an f4, normally that would be a problem, but the scope is tracking, so I can put the position of the object I'm looking at right in the middle, and it won't budge. So it's at least it's optimized for the center of the field. The tracking platform. So back in the early 90s, when I was working on the 20-inch and I was trying to figure out how can I add tracking to this, I came up with this idea, which was featured in Sky and Telescope in the January 1996 issue, in an article called the Top 10 Telescope Ideas of the Year. And I had presented this telescope as Telephane. This picture was taken by the Sky and Telescope photographer there. And you can see the principle of the mount, which is basically with a ball scope, you use a drive roller or two drive rollers that I use in my case, and a free rolling ball on the other end. And if those two rollers are pointed towards the pole, one of the poles, you will get tracking wherever the scope is pointing, and you can adjust the angle of the rollers to get different latitudes, and it doesn't add any, they're multi-latitude, it doesn't add any height to the eyepiece. You don't need to reset it. It just tracks all night, and they're very simple to make. I've made many of these. Jerry Olton rediscovered this idea about 10 years later, and he's been using it on several of his scopes. So I built a 6-inch prototype, make sure it worked before applying this to the 20-inch, and it worked. It works beautifully. The tracking platform, you can see some in these pictures. You can see of the 20-inch, you can see the large drive roller, 1.5-inch diameter. There's 2 synchronous motors. At the time, you could get synchronous motors. They provide very smooth tracking, and there's also 2 small balls, which you can see at the bottom there, which will capture the telescope if it comes off of its tracking platform, because there's a kind of an interference between the tracking platform and the tube, which creates a kind of a blind spot near the northern horizon from east to west. It's not, when you're down about 20 degrees above the horizon in the north, maybe 30 degrees east, 30 degrees west, you can't see those objects when the platform is pointing towards the north. I don't have a blind spot at zenith, but I do have a blind spot there. At worst, I just lift the telescope, put it on the ground, and observe it without the tracking, or I wait a couple of hours and I observe it when it rises again. For tracking, the third point of contact, other than those 2 motors, are a bunch of roller bearings, which you can see here. I could have put a tube with just 2 bearings. It just was simple to do it this way. I thought I had these bearings for nothing, so I just added them. But it would be nice if this third point was also had a motor on it. It would add friction and control, but it works quite well this way, so it's going to stay that way. And you can see at the bottom a picture of the entire platform with those 2 balls at the bottom, which catch the telescope, the 2 drive rollers, and the little ball bearings in front. I used one of these, found these batteries that have 110 volt inverters in them, and 12 volt and 5 volt and everything on it. And they're very practical. They don't weigh much. They give me about 15 hours of tracking I have 2 of them for these 2 motors, and it works really, really well for when I'm on the road. If not, I can just plug it in the 110 volt at home, and that works. Transporting the telescope is done quite easily because the platform integrates permanent. These are large plastic wheels that are used for lawnmowers. They're about 16 inches in diameter, and I added those to the platform. And the handle, which you use, the wheelbarrow handle that people normally use, I use just these 2 rods which push into the frame of the scope at the bottom, and I can both push or pull with this. They lock in place, so I can push them into the car or on the ground without any problem. And you can see the center of gravity of the scope is just above the wheel, so it's effortless. Lifting and pulling this is really not difficult, not effortless, but fairly easily. And there are trees around my house. If a tree is blocking, I can just move it around, even with the drive tracking. When I align it on the pole, I just roughly eyeball it, and that's good enough for at least a half hour of tracking. And if I'm more accurate, the tracking can last hours without interruption. Transporting the scope in the car is done with 2 aluminum ramps, which are just very lightweight U-channel aluminum like extrusions, which I bought and attached together. I have a short video, 5-minute video, which I'll show in the end here, which shows how it works. And you can see I move it. One of my objectives was to move it in a hatchback car, small hatchback car, and this was at the time I had a Toyota Matrix. It's a small hatchback car, and you can easily push this into the car and be on your way. The scope weighs about 130 pounds. The optical tube assembly about 80. I was aiming for 75, but I ended up with an 80-pound tube assembly, including the eyepieces and finder scopes and everything. So that's a fairly reasonable way to move around. And with the platform on there, you can also see the two aluminum, the bottom picture shows them well, the two aluminum rods that stick out. That's when you place the telescope in this position, you don't want the scope falling off its drive rollers because that's the only thing holding them. So I add these two pins, these two shafts to hold the scope so that it doesn't fall off onto the ground. And I remove them during observing because they get in the way. So the future, the mirror needs repolishing to remove astigmatism and scratches. I'm going to work on that after I've done my 28-inch, which is the next project. I'm seriously considering grinding the mirror down from f3.9 to f3.5 to bring the eyepiece really flat-footed observing. Scope balance would be improved by doing this. I would ask Mel if he thinks it's a good idea, but I know what he's going to say. He's going to say it's a terrible idea to regrind a mirror from f3.9 to f3.5. It should be reground to f2.5. But so I won't ask him if he thinks it's a good idea. Eventually, I hope to buy a full set of those Houdini eyepieces and try them on this telescope and other lightweight telescopes, and add hexapod truss tube collimation, like I mentioned, and add a light shroud, which I don't have at the moment. I'd like to show you this little video, which will show you how the scope is taken out of the car and assembled. I'm just going to reduce the weight. I've got some elevator music on there, which I'd like to speak above. So let's see if this works. Okay. Why isn't this going full screen? Well, I'll show you this way. So this is our club observatory near Montreal. And these are the ramps that I take out here first. Those small aluminum ramps, that's all you need. They have attachments at the top and bottom, and they have attachments so I can attach them to the car so that the scope doesn't fall off because I don't notice they're slipping off the bumper, for example. So you can see me here attaching those safety lanyards to the car. You can see this video on YouTube if you just type 20-inch f3.9 ball scope. So here I'm pulling out the handle that is used to carry the scope. You can see it's not too heavy. You can see the tube is moving around, and so one thing I found when I was driving around it is I have some elastics that attach this to the car structure because it tends to move around and jump up and down when there's a bump. And when I'm at the location, I just push that in and that's it. These are the truss tubes. They're attached in pairs of three pairs. Nope, forgot to remove the upper tube section, so the upper tube assembly is nested inside the hemisphere. And it's just sitting on the protective cover for the mirror. Get this music out of the way, it's ridiculous. So this is how I attach them. So they're trickier to attach than the plastic ones I had before. They were easier. They had a larger thread, and I don't like these. I always have trouble putting them on. But after a few tries, I end up succeeding.
Maybe a little bar soap will help.
Good idea. I never thought of that. Yeah. Because these pipe things, I don't know what they're used for, but they're used by plumbers for something, but they fit this quite well, and they never, like I said, all the hardware is attached to the telescope. When I'm carrying the scope, I have to remember to bring the scope and the truss bolts. Everything else I don't need, so I don't forget anything, which I've done with other telescopes. And then the upper tube section, they meet together, and there's a bolt that goes through, a 1/4-inch bolt that goes through and attaches to the rim. I was afraid that would happen someday, and it did. The aluminum bicycle rims are very thin, and the thread that I'd put on there eventually stripped, so I had to add some thicker aluminum plates that I now attach to. So that's the scope is assembled. Then I place the eyepieces, which I talked about a weight that I use. You can see here I'm pulling the weight, the brass weight out. It's about a 2.5 pound weight. And then I place the eyepiece, which rebalances the scope. And that's the drive. So you can see here the scope, how it moves very smoothly. And it doesn't show here, but the moon is just above there. So I was just going to aim for the moon. And I thought, oh, I forgot to remove the mirror cover. So the mirror cover, there's a large knob, which I'm unscrewing here, which attaches to the mirror support. And then I just pull the cover off, and there's the mirror. And there's a big battery that's used for heaters and computers and whatever I need, a 12-volt battery. And here I'm installing the quinsight. And then I look for the moon. And you can see the eyepiece turret turning here. See? So I'm placing the 2-inch eyepiece in position, and then focus, and that's it. That easy. So how do I get back to... Oh, there it is. So that's the presentation. Sorry it took so long.
Yeah, that's good.
Any questions? Yes.
Yeah, great. So, it looks to me maybe you could chop off the like bottom part of the ball too, like a slice it, because maybe you don't need it, right? It's
Which bottom part?
like the ball, we could chop off the like a slice of it.
No, you need all of it, because when you're pointing, you're rotating the tube continuously, and you need all of that surface that's left is always, depending where you're pointing, east, west, up, down, you're going to use some of that to, and you need it for tracking as well. And the eyepiece is always, you see, when you're observing, you have the eyepiece position, say, is here, and you can bring the scope the eyepiece upside down to a point, and then at some point you're not going to break your back. You're just going to rotate the tube, and you're going to use that surface. You're going to rotate the tube to continue observing with a more comfortable position. So you need all of the surface that's left. I can confirm that, yes.
I was intrigued by your,
The eyepiece turret, yeah.
yes, I saw the 3 small bearings, but did you cut a groove in the aluminum disc or something?
Yes, the aluminum disc has a V groove, and the bearings have V grooves as well. I found those somewhere, and I have a stack of them, so I can, if they break, I can replace them. I think they sell those, but they're little bearings with a brass V-shaped, that match the V of the. That's how they're held, and they're very very steady, and I have a rubber ball which rotates, and there are 2 indexed holes. So when I rotate, the rubber ball locks into that hole. Sorry?
Spring-loaded ball?
Yeah, spring-loaded ball. Yeah, and it locks the position, and the everything was machine milled on my milling machine in one shot, so it's very accurate. Other questions? Yes.
Lower truss connectors, they metal or are they plastic? Bolt that holds them down.
The lower metal they're metal today, but they used to be plastic, because these were shower head. When you buy a shower and there's this plastic thing, and you used to be able to get them out of metal. The ball itself is metal, but the rest of the hardware is plastic. And it worked for a couple of years, but plastic in the end dries up and starts to crack, and I have to replace them, because if not, the whole scope will fall apart. And I still remember the lady at the store when I bought 8 of them, because I was going to be an 8 truss too, and she said, "Wow, you must have a big house." Yes.
I'm also really intrigued with your, did you call it a gravestone grinder you used for the curve generation?
No, this was literally, the guy had his nozzle in his hand, and he sandblasted the center to start, and he used that, and he spread it out until he got to. That's how it was run. I remember reading that somewhere many years ago in the 60s or 70s. Someone had done that.
Starting to tell article about a 24-inch F4 in Illinois that they sandblasted out.
Okay, that's probably where I saw it, and I said, well, if it works for them, I'll try it.
I did it with a 40-inch F3.6.
Did you? Yeah.
I had a template, colored blasted.
It works. It's very fast. It's amazing how fast.
He's a graveyard guy. He let me in his pit. All right.
There you go. Anything else?
Was that before you perforated the mirror?
Yes. Yeah, I did that before I perforated the mirror. And the mirror was not only unequal thickness around the edge, but it was also, it's as if glass had spilled over the mold. There were chunks of glass sticking out. So I used just a diamond grinder, and I just rounded roughly round, and then I rotated it and made it as round as I could. Yeah.
Sorry, one more.
Yeah.
Attaching the center of the mirror. How do you attach your fitting mounted? Are you using a bolt on the top, or are you trying to maybe expand into a ring inside?
Well, the mirror is just dropped onto a cylinder, which has it's about 3/1000 of an inch smaller in diameter than the mirror hole. It's very, it's not tight fitting, but it's because there's expansion. So it just fits, and there's a thread at the end, and I screw a retainer ring that retains
the surface of the mirror.
Well, the ring is on the aluminum tube, and it rests. There's a little Teflon ring so that it doesn't touch the mirror directly, and it tightens it.
Your statement about putting it on the mirror machine spindle, and I think you said screw it on.
Oh, that's when I was making the mirror.
I think it was a similar amount.
Yeah, when I was making the mirror, I think they call it pitch blocking. Use pitch to block the bottom of the mirror to the mount that was used during grinding. That's another mirror mount. It's a different thing. Yeah. And if you ever get a chance to use the scope, those who have really enjoy it, because it's like you're not fighting the tube, especially when you're observing near zenith. Whenever I observe with someone who has a Dobsonian, say, well, we're not going to look there because that's near the zenith. I said, no, this is a ball scope. Go ahead, enjoy. And that's the whole idea of the ball scope. And having the tracking, you just stop and you show someone and 10 people and it's always there. The object is never moving.
Perfect finder, a perfect candidate for the sky solving too.
Well, yeah, I'm working on that. And I need to get weight down. And what I'd really like is to mount the sky solver eventually at the bottom of the tube. It doesn't really need to be at the top. And I've got my iPad, for example, clipped to one of the truss tubes with a broom handle. The broom handles, when you click a broom handle to the wall, I've done the reverse. I've attached it to the little thing that holds the iPad in its cover, and I just clip it onto the 1-inch diameter truss tubes, one of the truss tubes, and I can see while I'm moving it around. But that all adds weight to the telescope and makes it more and more unbalanced. And
so speaking of weight, I think you mentioned that the counterweights are behind the mirror. Do you have to remove the mirror to change the counterweight?
I don't need to remove them because I have about 8 pounds of counterweight behind the mirror, little pieces of brass plates that I've put on, because initially it was balanced okay, but then I started adding finders and other things and filter wheels and of course it's a 1-to-4 approximately ratio. So whatever pound I add up there, I have to add 4 pounds down there. And so I don't need to remove them because they're average okay. But sometimes if I have a heavier eyepiece and I'm observing, especially near east or west, then I'm in the axis of those bearings, those ball bearings. I don't have as much friction to hold it. And because there's no friction adjustment on this, you get what you get when you sit the scope on the 2 drive cylinders and the third free rolling ball bearing. So you end up with what you get. And sometimes if it's too heavy and I'm observing with a low power eyepiece, I'll remove one of the high power eyepieces, and that's enough to just bring it back in balance. But it would benefit from another pound or 2 behind the mirror, but I'm going to shorten the tube and redo the whole thing. That'll change it. Okay. Howard, I think I'm finished. Thank you. Okay. So, stop the share. Okay, so
these tensions within both parties, but so
So what
far
the hell?
their feet is not to the fire, but that may come in a couple of weeks.
Well, as this shutdown.
Put the pause up there. I know, yeah, Brooks and Capehart. Okay. Okay, so that's the lunchtime. Oh my gosh. What's going on here?
I wanted this more very open.
So you know what observing will is, right?
Oh, for sure, yeah. I always forget that it's bats, just because there's nothing to them. That's right, yeah. I always forget that, it's this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks so simple.